Good morning and welcome to day 3 of the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Bradenton, Florida. My name is David Wyatt. I am joined by my broadcast partner, 2008 Olympic gold medalist Lindsay Shoup. And Lindsay, we are watching this first race, particularly Sarasota crew, get into the stake boats at our world-class race course here at Benderson Park. And I'm looking at the schedule, Lindsay. One of the things that I noticed for today is that many of these finals, we're going to have B, C, and D level finals all day today. So every race is going to be a final. So it's going to be the last race for each of these crews that you're going to see the entire day. But one of the things that I noticed is that for most of the C finals, we are taking advantage of the fact that we can have 8 boats across.
Rather than having a one or two boat D final, something like that, all of these boats being able to get out here and race in the B or C final, depending on how many entries there are in each of these categories, that allows these athletes to have bigger races. More people are in the mix. That also allows somebody that maybe was a little bit off the day before to jump in there, and they could sneak in for a higher level position than they might otherwise be in if they were in a lower level final here. So you never know. Keep an eye out on those outside lanes, all those lanes across, and that is yet again one of those unique features of being able to be here in Southwest Florida at Nathan Benderson Park on this race course the way that it is. David, you and I were just chatting a few moments ago about how this course has developed over the years, having been able to come over here for at least a decade and check it out. Remembering when it was cattails and 1,500 meters and trailers parked over on the west side of the course. So just to see the vision develop over the years so that we have this place to create this format to allow these young people to come out here and lay down races at a world-class facility just took amazing forethought and follow-through on the part of the rowing community, which is just incredible.
Yeah, remembering when it was dirt hills and they were just first developing it and they had to dredge out the lake to make sure that it was 2,000 meters as we get a great pan shot here of what's going to be our first race, which is going to be the B final of the men's under 15 coxed quad. Again, we'll talk about it throughout the day. This is a new event. These athletes are all under 15 years of age. They just have to be in their age 14 year, and they can be 14 through December 31st of this year in order to qualify. Getting a lot more athletes out here by adding these events and going to some of these age group events is really been a great feature of this 2022 regatta. But you're right. I mean, I can remember I could tell you stories for days about what this place used to be. I mean, it's a shell pit. And now it is the premier race course in North America. And the fact that we can have almost 800 boats come from all over the nation to contest these championships this weekend makes me very happy. And it typically makes all of these teams very happy as well. They enjoy coming. We have really had a lot of cloud cover, which is great. It hasn't been quite as hot as it typically would be. We actually had some thunderstorms overnight, but you can see the conditions this morning, Lindsay, are just beautiful and flat. Really nothing going on up there at the start line right now.
For those of you at home watching, you can really appreciate just how flat and calm it is, the way the weather is up there at the start line. It really does reflect the kind of environment that these athletes are experiencing when you're at the start. Calm, quiet, just a few voices happening, and then they're going to take off, and it's no longer going to be calm and quiet and just a few voices happening. It's going to be many voices from all those coxswains helping these guys down the race course.
Right, so again, these are under 15 athletes. They're all 14 or younger. They are probably on this race course in the context of a youth national championship for the first time. And here we go. Day 3 is underway at our 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship. With this 6-boat across race, let me set the field for you. Furthest from the camera is San Miguel Academy out of Newburgh, New York. 1 lane closer is Austin Rowing Club out of Austin, Texas. A lane closer is Rockland out of Nyack, New York. Then there is a white boat there, which is Sarasota Crew. And then we've got Whitfield out of Kansas City, Missouri, in that sort of burgundy-colored boat that's trying to go to the lead with Sarasota Crew. And the boat looks like from Austin Rowing Club. And then on the left side of the screen in lane 7 is the boat from Dallas United Rowing.
Now as these guys get these boats up to speed, one of the things about the quad is because there are just 4 rowers and 1 coxswain in there, but they have those 8 oars that allows them to get the boat up to speed a little bit more quickly than they would if they were in an 8 with more bodies but an equal number of oars. So to see them get up to speed, get up to this first 250 meters as quickly as they did, that is how this boat class really works. It helps them get up to speed. Now the question is, who's going to keep it up to speed as they continue to, learn through this process too. Some of these guys, this might be their first experience with rowing. Some of them may have rowed through middle school. We don't know what we have out there. And so there is a range of levels of experience here. But regardless of the level of experience, here they are in the B final for the men's U15 coxed quad.
So this is contesting places 7 through 12 in the nation in this new event, the men's under 15 coxed quad. One thing that I will point out about these boats, if you look at most of them, on the right side of the screen, you're going to see a coxswain. You're going to see their head kind of popping up there in the bow of the boat behind the bow rower as they come through 500, and you can see these 4 boats connected. Sarasota Crew there in lane 5 actually has what's called a stern coxed boat, meaning that the coxswain is actually facing the rowers and is directly facing the stroke rower. So that coxswain is sitting in the stern of the boat. Typically, racing boats are going to have the coxswain in the bow. Obviously, Sarasota has decided in this situation that they would rather have the coxswain in the stern, maybe really for coaching purposes. The coxswain really fulfills lots of roles, not only steering the boat straight, keeping it straight in the lane, calling a race plan, motivating the rowers because they do have an electronic voice system, so they are talking the whole way typically. Maybe that coxswain, maybe the coaches have decided that it's more valuable to have that coxswain sitting in the stern so that the coxswain can see what the rowers are doing.
As we get that great overhead shot here, now that we're moving a little bit farther through the course, you can see that it is currently at this point, we have Whitfield in the lead here, and having come in 5th place in their respective semi, that's why they are in the lane, or excuse me, that's Dallas United there. Having come in 6th place in their respective semifinal, that's why they are in the lane closest to shore. That's Dallas United there in that maroon hull with now Whitfield in the picture and Sarasota Crew as well. And it is Dallas United who, even though having placed 6th, they want to put themselves out in front nice and early here and take a lead, see how much ground they can get on the rest of the field to kind of move out from there and see if they can, again, sneak in there from this outside. That's why these B finals are so incredible, is whatever your performance was in your semi, something like that, maybe something occurred, or maybe you took it back to the garage and corrected something that is now allowing you to have a better race today. That's the beauty of getting to get on a course like this and go down the race course more times. More experience at the line, more experience at these big races only helps you along the way.
So it's actually Whitfield, just to correct you, that Dallas United is about to come through there in the white boat there.
Excuse me.
So it's Whitfield out in front, but you're right. Look, this is Nationals. This may be a B final. Potentially all of these boats are a little bit maybe upset that they are in a B final, but you're still at a B final at Nationals. This is a brand new event. And you are an athlete that's under 15 years of age, and you're on the race course at the Youth National Championship. We get out here to race to win, and that's the bottom line. So whatever you find yourself in, B final, C final, D final, these coaches are telling the rowers, look, this is your last race of the season in this particular boat class with this particular lineup, and let's go out and have the best race that we possibly can have. And that's what's going on here with Whitfield, but also going with them is Sarasota Crew and Rockland, those 2 white boats on the left side of the screen as we come through 1250. And then the other sort of maroon boat up there is Austin Rowing Club. You can see that they are connected very well with both Sarasota Crew and the crew from Rockland. So those are your top 4. And then obviously it does sort of push back that San Miguel Academy there, a brand new team. They are from Newburgh, New York. First time they have been at Youth Nationals. And then you see there Dallas United coming through in lane 7.
Thank you for that correction there, David. I course, we start in lane 2, not lane 1. That's what threw me off. I had a moment there. But it is, Whitfield still out in front, having come in 5th in their respective semi. They saw Sarasota Crew in their own semi just yesterday, or they watched Sarasota Crew go down their own semi just yesterday, and they were about 6 seconds apart from them, and so to have this spacing, we talked about being in different races, we talked about being in the time trial, you don't have boats right next to you, so being able to get on the race course against competitors rather than cross-comparing times, that allows you to get out there and show your stuff. So here we are again, Whitfield from the very beginning. They set themselves out in front just gradually through that second 500, and they've only lengthened out from there to take even more of a lead on the rest of the field. These young men, I'm sure, will have the opportunity to get back into these boats at some point. Staying in sculling at such a young age, it's going to teach them so much that will allow them to be better at rowing starboard. It'll allow them to be better at rowing port. It'll allow them to stay in the sport longer. So having familiarity with sculling, because a quad is a lot of moving parts, being able to get out there and learn all of these skills so that they can pattern the skills early on and stay healthy through the sport as well by being multifaceted within this single sport. So even if they come to rowing very early rather than doing other sports, there are lots of different ways to mix up what you're doing within this one single sport as well.
Rockland really trying to push it here. They've actually closed the gap a little bit on Whitfield. As you do mention that, a somewhat typical way to start now with rowing is in a sculling boat. But if you've ever sat in a quad, quite frankly, it can be a little bit anxiety-inducing because it is a very fast boat and there are a lot of moving parts. There are 8 oars just like you are in an 8, but each rower is in control of 2. Having a coxswain here is certainly very helpful. It's going to keep these boats straight as we continue to have this pretty big lead, a little bit of open water for Whitfield. And these 3 boats have been connected all the way down the race course. Sarasota Crew is just behind Rockland and just ahead of Austin as they approach the finish line here in our first race of day 3 of the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship.
And so it is Whitfield by open water at this point. They've pushed out their lead. Very mature race on the parts of Austin, Rockland, and Sarasota Crew, the next 3 boats that will cross the finish line to stay in contact with one another. But it is ultimately Rockland who pushes through unofficially in 2nd place, potentially Austin, and then Sarasota Crew having turned it on there at the end with Austin, really put themselves up in there. Maybe they snuck in there ahead of Sarasota Crew. And bringing up, it's going to be a close finish, too, between San Miguel Academy and Dallas United.
San Miguel coming and beating a boat in the B final here for the first time. You love to see it. San Miguel Academy finishing 5th in the B final, just ahead of Dallas United. So that was our first race. That was the men's under 15 Cox Quad B final. We'll take a short break, and then we'll be back to you with the women's under 15.
Hello and welcome to the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships. I'm Chris Perry, President of Broadridge Financial Solutions, a very proud partner of U.S. Rowing. On behalf of my 14,000 colleagues worldwide at Broadridge, we want to congratulate all the athletes on their accomplishments in qualifying for this regatta. The discipline and consistency it takes to get here does not go unnoticed. We hope you and your families enjoy the day, and best of luck to all the athletes competing today.
And here we are already underway in the women's U15 Coxed Quad B final. Because we have 7 entries in this particular race, this is for places 7 through 13 in the country, having had 13 entries in this event when we started on Thursday. We are now having everything fall where it may lie, and these athletes are deciding where they want to be by racing down the race course together side by side on this beautiful course that we have. Right now, in lane 1 on the far side of the course, we have Sylvan Scullers. In lane 2 is White Rock. In lane 3, South Jersey. Lane 4, Rockland. Lane 5, Treasure Coast. Lane 6, Pacific. And lane 7 is TriStar. So that will be the lane closest to the shore is lane 7.
So pretty spaced out field. You can see them coming through 1,000 meters. And looks like the boat in lane 5 is the one that's out in front here, Treasure Coast. And that's what it shows us as the times start to come through. You can see it's pretty spaced out, but by the same token, everybody, with the exception of maybe one or two boats here, of fairly similar speed. Obviously, Treasure Coast is way out in front, but then you see second place is being held right now by the boat from Rockland. And you can see Rockland with just a little bit of open water back to both South Jersey and maybe, so I guess maybe I guess maybe that is South Jersey who is sitting in second place. Yep, as the times come through. Sorry, it's a little bit confusing with the lanes, but it is South Jersey just ahead of Rockland, and then you can see in that green boat is White Rock. So those are your top four. Again, pretty spaced out. It's a new event. Obviously, we have different speeds. There were 13 boats that lined up for the time trial in this event and entered. So these are the boats that are going to finish 7th through 13th in the nation. As you see a good picture there of Treasure Coast from the east coast of Florida. And these boats continuing to kind of press each other. You've got a good overlap there, and then starting to move up is that boat from lane 7 from TriStar in Knoxville, Tennessee.
So you can see that it does appear that Treasure Coast, our current leaders in that blue hull, have broken clear water there on South Jersey, who is the white hull just 2 lanes over from them. Sandwiched in between them is Rockland, who has a close race going on with White Rock right now, who is 2 lanes over from them. So we have a little bit of a stagger here happening, but South Jersey does have a bit of open water on the next 2 boats that are in your picture at this point. So as we get into the last 500, these boats, our leaders right here and out of Treasure Coast, are about to cross into the last 500 of this race, which means they know they have the last quarter. This is the closing segment of their youth nationals for these athletes, and so they want to execute the best last 500 that they've had so far this season. So wherever they are, push reset. Let's see if we can find a little bit more. I always tell athletes that I coach, how can you go a little bit faster? You know what? Even deciding to sprint 1 stroke sooner, or push yourself 1 stroke sooner, or sit stronger 1 stroke sooner, that's a decision to go just a little bit faster. You do that over enough days, enough years of time, and you're going to be a lot faster in the long run. So let's see what these young women have in their back pockets for this 2022 Youth National Championship, the B final of the women's under 15 coxed quad.
And you can see South Jersey, they actually really closed the gap quite a bit on Treasure Coast there in the third 500. So as they come into the last 500, it's only a couple of seats of open water. At one point, it seemed to me like Treasure Coast had about a length of open water. So South Jersey is moving, and then trying to go with South Jersey is the boat from Rockland. Those are the 3 that are on the screen right now. The blue boat, Treasure Coast, they're out in front. Then the white boat in the center is South Jersey, and then Rockland was on the left side of your screen if you're watching at home on YouTube. So again, a very, spaced out field that we have here. It does not look like we have Pacific in the race, but we do have Sylvan Scullers. They're all the way up there in lane 1. So it's a 6-boat B final. Again, to contest places 7 through 12 in the nation in this brand new event, the women's under 15 coxed quad. And Treasure Coast, familiar with the race course. And these women, these under 15 women, are going to try to win this B final. Maybe lay down their best time that they've ever put on a 2,000-meter race course. Probably they only have a handful of them to begin with, and finish their season.
And it is Rockland has pushed out from White Rock, but between White Rock and Pacific, they have quite the battle going on for the last 15 strokes or so, 12 strokes of this race, as they are the 2 boats in the outside lanes here in lanes 2 and lane 6. So it is Treasure Coast who pushed out early on, took the lead and took it by open water, and it is South Jersey that's going to hang on just ahead of Rockland, who made a great push there in the last 500 meters to get back into that lead that South Jersey had on them. And as we come down to the line, it is between White Rock and Pacific battling out in those green and white hulls all the way down to the line. And it appears that White Rock has taken 4th over Pacific.
One more boat to finish up. It's Sylvan Scullers, and that was your women's under 15 coxed quad B final. As we are kicking off our morning here at day 3 of the 2022 USRowing Youth National Championship with a slate of B finals. And the next race we're going to see is just one year age up from what we saw previous. So it's the men's under 16 coxed quad. So same boat class, it's a quad. Each rower has 2 oars. It's a sculling boat, and there's a coxswain in each of them. And look how awesome this race is early on. Let me set the field for you. In lanes 2 and 3, you have boats from Community Rowing Boston, and you can see them rowing in those 2 red boats. 1 lane closer, lane 4 is TriStar. Lane 5 is Detroit. Lane 6 is Newport Seabase out of California, and then lane 7 is Row America Rye. As they come through 750, everybody is still in this race, half a length separating all 6 boats.
So we're just under 3 minutes into this race, and all 6 boats, as David said, are still in contact with one another. This is a testament to the level of competition within the field itself. So we're at nationals, but not only that, within the field itself, there is a solid level of competition happening. So whatever happened the other days so far in the regatta, here we are on Saturday. It's day 3 of the event. Okay, let's push reset. What can we improve? I had a coach. Certainly, this is a great piece of advice. You know, when you go into a race, you might immediately fixate on the 10 things that you could have done that went wrong. Well, okay, pick one of those things and make it better. You know, so what went well, keep doing those things. What's one, maybe 2 things that you can do even better. And so that's, again, another step that these young guys are taking. So no matter where they fell earlier in the weekend, here we are side by side having a fantastic race as they come through midway of this race.
So the only boat that's fallen out of contact with the others at the moment is the boat in lane 7 from Row America Rye as they came through the halfway point. Your leader on the right side of the screen there with the sort of blue, actually the unisuits look blue, the blades look purple and gold. That is Detroit. So Detroit won this race to 1,000 meters. I had him about 34 strokes a minute. It does look pretty controlled as you see them now in the center of the screen there. On the left side of Detroit is TriStar. They're sitting in 2nd place. On the right side of Detroit in this picture is the boat from Newport Seabase. And then this side shot shows you those 2 CRI boats that are unmistakable as they come through 1250. Those 2 red boats from Community Rowing. You ever walk into that boathouse on the Charles and everything in that place is red. And so it's very easy, makes it very easy on us as rowing commentators that they get in this equipment that is very much uniform in terms of color. So you still see the whole field in this beautiful shot. Row America Rye is the boat that is closest to the drone, and you can see they're the only boat without contact right now.
And it is Newport Seabase and TriStar that are flanking Detroit there that have contact with that crew. They're pushing up. They're vying for that spot as well. Newport Seabase dropping back just a hair in that shot there, but everyone's still maintaining contact with one another across the race course. It is CRI's B boat who is currently nudging out in front of CRI's A boat, which is almost put them into 2nd place as they get into the last 500 here. So is CRI in the far side of the course? That's out in lane 2, CRI's B boat, taking advantage of maybe being a little sneaky, maybe being a little bit away from the rest of the crews. You know, when you're younger and there's not a lot going on, you have no one on the outside lane of you. That kind of allows your focus, your attention to be at least only toward one side of the course. So maybe that's allowed them to stay a little more internal here from that outside lane. And it has certainly allowed them to sneak up on TriStar, who is currently the boat that was sitting in 2nd place.
And now they're in 3rd place as TriStar as the CRI B boat. Up there in lane 2 is clearly in 2nd place, and in fact really tracking down your leader the whole way, Detroit. So this is going to be a great race in the last 250. A very close race as they approach those red buoys. This is it. This is why Nationals is so fun. And we've got all these connected boats as CRI now takes the lead all the way up there in lane 2, the CRI B boat or the A boat. Who knows how they sent them out today. But you've got a CRI boat that has really been tremendous over the last 500 meters, has gotten just past that boat from Detroit that's had the lead the whole way. Now Detroit really getting pressed by that boat from TriStar in the adjacent lane. Here they go. TriStar is winding it up. It looks like they may blow past Detroit as well.
You can certainly see that TriStar emotionally, they've decided to hunt that line, and they are putting pressure on that CRI boat that's in the far lane. CRI seemed to stay composed. And now take a look at that. Detroit smelled the pressure that TriStar put on them, and they said, no, 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 no. And they decided to do something about it as well. This is going to be a 3-boat race all the way across, but right now it looks like TriStar has put themselves in the lead, having come from behind, and it is by a deck. TriStar unofficially over too close to call between CRI and Detroit. And then it is Newport Seabase that came back in and took advantage of that fade by the other CRI entry in lane 3, with Row America Rye rounding out our 6 boats here in this B final of the men's U16 coxed quad.
A lot of excitement there. Had my adrenaline going. Lindsay, 3 boats separated by about 12 feet at the finish line.
Gave me chills there, David.
Yeah, pretty awesome. It's exactly what we hope to see all day long here at day 3 of the U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships, where we're going to bring you B, C, and D finals in each of these youth events. And the next race that we're going to have for you shortly after we take a quick break is going to be the women's under 16 cox quad B final. So you just saw the men's version, and the women's version is next.
So here we are on the course, just under 2 minutes down in the women's U16 coxed quad, the B final. Having started this weekend with 20 entries, we will decide places 7 through 12 in this event. Just crossing through the first 500 in lane order is in lane 2, Maritime B. In lane 3, Row America Rye. Lane 4, Oregon Unlimited. Lane 5, Parati. Lane 6, Lakeside, and Lane 7, Sarasota.
I don't know how Sarasota drew lane 7, Lindsay, closest to the beach coming down, knowing that they are the hometown boat, but we'll see if that has any effect on what goes on with them in the last 500 meters. They are off the pace right now in lane 7. Out in front, and your leader right now is Oregon Rowing Unlimited on the right side of the screen, and you can see them sort of powering their way down the race course. And you can see that their lead is about a length there on Row America Rye, which is a boat in the center of the screen as they come through 750. Then the boat just behind Row America Rye, you see about a half a length of open water, and then you see another boat. That is Maritime B. And then just coming into the picture there, that bow on the far left side, that is Parati. So again, we are a little bit spaced out, but we haven't even hit the halfway point. It's a new event. As we talk to coaches out here, particularly about these new events and these younger age group events, they're telling us that clearly the athletes don't have quite as much experience, and every time they go out on the water, they find new positives, they go faster, and as you got a good shot there of lane 7, Sarasota crew, but this overhead shot really shows you where these crews stand. Pretty spaced out.
You know, it is Oregon Unlimited who came out of the semifinals with one of the 2 fastest times. It was them and Parati that posted the fastest times coming through the AB semis yesterday. And so that's why they drew those center lanes in lane 4 and lane 5. Following them, it was Row America Rye who would have had the next fastest time, which is, again, why they drew the lane that they are currently in. So those are the crews that came through the semifinals with the fastest speeds. But right now, as it stands, those are not the 3 crews that are our current leaders of the pack. And so again, making jumps from one day to the next, making those corrections, making those adjustments to get yourself out there and faster, that's going to help you from day to day. As it is Lakeside, who was about 4 or 5 seconds off of the pace of those 3 crews that I just mentioned, is the crew that's also up there and putting themselves in the mix here in this B final.
Yep, you mentioned Lakeside out of Seattle, Washington. As we see a good shot there of your leader, Oregon Rowing Unlimited. Long-standing youth program. Over the years, over the decades, many, many entries at youth nationals. great to see them come across the country and compete in this new event. You saw the second place come through. That was Row America Rye. This boat in front of you is Lakeside, and you can see they are still hanging on to third place ahead of, it looked like Maritime B and then Parati in that order based upon that camera angle and shot. You see that red buoy there in the center of the screen? That is the buoy at 1250. So each 250 meters on this world-class race course here at Nathan Benderson Park has a red buoy line. So that helps the rowers. It helps the coxswains know exactly where they are on the race course, even if they're not looking to the shore and trying to find markers on the shore to tell them where they are. And the lead just keeps being extended now by Oregon Rowing Unlimited, Lindsay. It's over a length of open water. And the only boat that's really challenging them from a speed perspective is that Row America Rye boat. But you can see they're a full length of open water off the pace.
And it is Oregon Unlimited. They do have open water from the rest of the field. We've seen them do this over the course of the weekend in various sculling events in particular, where they kind of get out in front. And so they clearly, as a program wide, have some good sculling happening out there in Oregon. You know, we mentioned Lakeside is in there. They are with the maroon and yellow tipped blades out of Seattle, Washington. So more good sculling happening. Obviously, there's a long history of rowing in general out of Seattle, but certainly sculling. But as they enter into the last 400 or so meters of this race, it is Lakeside and Row America Rye who are vying for that second spot right now. Can Lakeside nudge it up a little bit? Will this late push by Parati be enough for Parati to get back up in there? Will it encourage Lakeside to get a little bit more on it and push, which will push them even more up into Row America Rye? So it appears that we're starting to cluster up a little bit more than we were through the middle of that race. And will there be some late kicks like we saw in the men's event just a moment ago, where lead changes might change in the last 250 meters that we see Oregon Unlimited now entering into, closely now followed by Row America Rye also getting to the last 250 meters as well.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to catch Oregon at this point. Great overhead shot. You can see exactly what's going on in that boat with the seats moving, the athletes moving, they're getting their blades in the water, and their lead is pretty tremendous. They are being pushed by Row America Rye, but I'm not sure that Rye has enough space to track down Oregon, and there may be another gear from Oregon that they can throw into their piece to finish up their season. But it did get a little closer. You remarked about that previous race, TriStar coming from third place to first place in that men's installment, and they did that over the last 250. So these boats can definitely change speed depending upon what type of energy is left and what type of gears they can go to. But it does look like pretty handily it's going to be Oregon Rowing Unlimited that is going to finish this thing up a length of open water ahead of Row America Rye, and Row America Rye with about the same distance on third place Lakeside. And then it's going to come down maybe to a photo here between Parati and Maritime B. It is. It's going to come right down to a photo to figure out who's going to finish fourth.
Looks like Parati has the edge here, just a little bit more surge. You can see that happening in the bow, and it does appear from where we sit unofficially that Parati did sneak past Maritime B, who made a great last surge there to get back up in there and make it a close race, with Sarasota rounding out our field of 6 here. Again, this was for places 7 through 12 in the women's U16 Coxed Quad B final. From 20 entries, we have just now decided our places 7 through 12 out of the 20 that started the weekend here at the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships.
All right, let me set up this blistering race for you. This is a great race early on. As they come through about 650, you're going to see the sign for 750 meters into our 2,000-meter race course here shortly. It's a 4-boat race. This is the B final of the men's under 16 eights. So, again, all these athletes are 15 years of age or younger in these eights, as Orr's closest to us starts to maybe finally take the first big punch here in this field. But you can see everybody connected at 750. Furthest from the camera is Space Coast Crew. One lane closer in lane 4 is Everett Rowing Association. Then it's Pacific in that white boat with the red blades. And then closest to us is the aforementioned Orlando Area Rowing Society who has about a half a length on both Pacific and Everett at this point in the race. So we're not quite halfway. But again, the Lindsay, the rowing quality for athletes that are this young, really setting the bar. I mean, this is a B final. This is for places 7 through 10 in the nation in this event, and the rowing's pretty tremendous. I mean, 15-year-olds, there's no way in my mind that they have rowed for more than a couple years, and probably most of them learned how to row this year or last year.
That's where, the depth of field, having young leaders, people that are a little older than you on your team can really help out, people to emulate, people to look up to. So every single athlete that's out there on the course right now, think about that. Who are you being for the people younger than you? Who is the teammate that you want, that you look up to? Can you be that person? Can you be even more than that person for those people that are coming up? Can you be that person for yourself? So that only helps the whole team grow for years to come. But as we've been talking about those things, it is Everett Association out of Everett, Washington, who has made that push to try to get back into the lead that Oars took out of course, Orlando, Florida, very early on. So that has allowed Everett to get the edge now on Pacific, who had a very tight race with them for the first 1,000 meters or so of this race. And so now as they continue to push, you'll see Pacific and Everett giving pushes to one another. I'm sure the coxswains are letting all of these athletes know exactly where they stand. Hey, they took a little bit. What can we get right now? In this race, we have 2 Florida schools and 2 West Coast schools, Pacific out of California, Everett out of Washington. So 2 East Coast, 2 West Coast here in this B final of the men's U16 8, deciding places 7 through 10 in the country. So here we are. I said Everett took a little bit of an edge, and Pacific has answered. Oars is still out in front, with only Space Coast falling just a little bit off the pace here as this race endures.
So we're about 100 meters from 500 meters to go, and it continues to be Oars, and you can see that their lead, based on the drone, is about a half a length because Everett is charging. Everett has really cut the lead that Oars had by 3 or 4 seats over the last, let's say, 400 meters. And we'll see what happens because these 3 boats are connected. Certainly any one of them could end up winning this B final in these last 500 meters. Obviously, Oars at the bottom of the screen is in the driver's seat. They also probably know the race course fairly well. They had to at least race at regionals here. And that coxswain in the Oars boat only has to look left. And I keep seeing him look over. He's totally focused on Everett. And that's
because Everett is moving. That's why.
And that's probably what he should be doing, was what I was going to say, because Everett continues to kind of move. So we'll see who has what up their sleeve here, because really, again, any of these 3 boats, because Pacific is still in the mix. If there's a gear that we haven't seen that's tremendous from any of these boats, they could win this thing.
And just as much as Everett is pushing into Oars, Oars is answering a little bit. But even though they're answering, you'll see it just a few strokes change, and then Oars able to stay in front. Everett still pushes back. And so now they're kind of holding in this 3-boat pattern here as we approach the finish line. Still only Space Coast just a little bit off the pack, but they too have started to sprint. They knew they needed to get back in this. They needed to sprint early. And from body language of all 4 of these crews out on the course, they all want to get to that line as fast as possible. Everyone here is in that last 250 meters. They know they have less than 20 strokes left at this point. And it is Everett Association that is surging, with Oars still slightly ahead. Are they going to stay ahead as they get pushed? Great racing here, being forced to answer calls and questions, getting inside each other's heads here at this point. Breathing, I'm sure there is spit flying out on the course, but right now it is Oars that's been able to maintain that edge and hold off that fantastic surge that Everett Association put on, not only to stay in front of Pacific, but also to take parts from that Oars lead that was set early. So it is by about a half a length. Oars out of Orlando, followed by Everett out of Washington. You have Pacific there in between. California, another West Coast school. And then we have Space Coast to round out our field of 4. Those are places 7 through 10 in the country, folks, in the men's U16 8.
So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back to you with the women's under 16 8 final B shortly.
And here we are in the very early stages of this first 500 of the women's U16-8B final. Of 16 entries that we started the weekend with, we are here to decide places 7 through 12 in the country. In lane order from the far side of the race course, in the background, lane 2 is Saugatuck, lane 3 Chicago, lane 4 Newport Seabase, lane 5 Marina Aquatic Center, lane 6 Pacific, and lane 7 is Rowe, New Jersey.
You can see an early lead there for Newport Seabase. They're in the dark shell that is being flanked by Chicago with the light blue jerseys, and then on the other side by Marina Aquatic Center out of Marina Del Rey. But everybody's still in it. You see a good shot there of Saugatuck on the far side. Nice chevron that we've got going on as they come through 500 meters. But again, 5 of these boats very well connected, really all 6 actually. The only boat that's pushed out is that boat from Newport Seabase. As they come through 500, you can see that their lead is about a half a length, and then it's extremely close between Chicago and Marina Aquatic Center. Newport Seabase and Marina Aquatic Center, obviously they raced against each other at the Southwest Regionals, and so they are somewhat familiar with one another, but then you have these other boats from Chicago, from the Midwest. Also, you have Pacific, so you have 3 boats from the Southwest that are all in this B final, and then you've got Rowe, New Jersey, and Saugatuck out of Connecticut, and Rowe, New Jersey, obviously out of New Jersey. The only boats that are off the pace and not in the current picture of these 4 boats that are connected are the 2 on the outside, Saugatuck and Rowe, New Jersey. Continues to be a lead for Newport Seabase. You saw it at 500 meters. It was about 2 seconds. And you can see that the coxswain in the Newport Seabase boat right about in between the 2-woman and 3-woman in second place Marina Aquatic Center.
So interesting here, of these 6 crews that are in this race, 4 places 7 through 12, these are the 6 crews that came in 7 through 12, not in that specific order in the time trial. So to see that kind of fall, the chips are falling as they sort of did earlier on as these athletes came down the course in time trial style on Thursday. And so now the same clump of 6 that came in the order that they did on in their time trial on Thursday now get to be side by side and see how that actually shakes out when they see one another, having gotten to practice having the step in between going through the semifinals yesterday, to see who's gained the most ground over the weekend, who's learned the most to really lay it down here. It also is a show of fitness. Here we are racing another almost 2,000 meters. This is 2,000 meters on Thursday. The time trial was a little bit shy of 2,000 meters. So to have that many races under your belt in this many days, it can be wearing on the athletes, and that is why that's where all the training really comes from. It's not just to have one fast 2K, but multiples in a day or in a weekend to be able to put out your fastest speed over time, over numerous races. So it is still Newport Seabase, very close with Marina Aquatic Center, who's been going back and forth with Chicago, and now Pacific putting themselves closer in there as well. So now we have 3 boats that are flanking our still leader of Newport Seabase very closely here. And as we get through that 1,250 meters, approaching nearly getting into the last 500 meters in the next minute or so of this race, that is a very tight race for second, third, and fourth place between those 3 boats.
Yeah, if you look at those bows, I mean, look how all of them are relative to the coxswain and the Newport Seabase boat. They are, those 3 bows are within 20 feet at most of each other. Through 1,000 meters, we didn't see the time come through, but it was Chicago at 1,000 meters to my eye that was slightly ahead of the boat from Pacific. Now Marina Aquatic Center is starting to drop back just a little bit as Pacific and Chicago start to wind it up some here as they come through 1250. And one of the things that I typically look for in a shot like this is I'm watching the bows charge into that leader Newport Seabase. Now they're sitting out there with almost a full length, so it should be comfortable to some extent for those rowers. I mean, they're going through the third 500, so nothing is physically comfortable. But at least from a mental standpoint, they know that they have a lot of space here. But it's really the second fastest mover right now is Pacific. They were actually sitting in 4th place at 1,000 meters, as I said. I think it was Chicago, Marina Aquatic Center, and then Pacific. So Pacific has really owned this third 500 to the point where they're actually cutting the gap just a little bit on Newport Seabase.
You know, and you could see when you were just talking about what you're looking for, it was Pacific that was making a clear charge. Chicago stayed comfortable, continued doing what they were doing. It didn't look as though they made a huge move or anything like that to counter. They are a few lanes over, so maybe they aren't quite aware of what was going on there with Pacific, but it was very clear that Pacific, you could see some of the athletes just stack the blocks a little bit more, keep their bodies a little more vertical as they wanted to go for a little bit more. That allowed them to get a little more on it with the legs. So they made a clear, obvious charge at that point, and it's allowed them to take even more from that lead that Newport Seabase had extended out to almost a length or more earlier on in the race. So now the question is, do they have even another gear, or did they charge early just to get inside the heads of not only Newport Seabase but also Marina Aquatic Center, who they've now passed and have clear water on, but also Chicago. They also have a clear handle. That is Pacific that has a clear handle on Chicago right now. Newport Seabase about almost broken clear water on Chicago, but now you can see Chicago starting to make a move, deciding that they're going to start going here, because all of these three boats that are now our leaders are getting into the last 250 meters of this race, and as soon as the athletes see those red buoys, you know, it's just pure adrenaline at this point. They're breathing, their eyes are open. You know, who knows if there is any thought happening except one, more.
So it's Newport Seabase trying to go start to finish, hang on to a win in the B final of the women's under 16.8. Big charge being put on by Pacific. Pacific I had at 38 strokes a minute. I had Newport Seabase at 37, and I actually had Chicago at 36. So if Chicago has another gear in terms of cadence here in these last 12 or so strokes, they might be able to track down Pacific. That has really been very close between those two boats from the 50, really from like 1250. But it is Newport Seabase that is hanging on at the moment, and it does look like Pacific is pretty solidly hanging on to second place, but we're going to have three boats connected at the finish line, which is as good as it gets in an eights race here at Nathan Benderson Park for our 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship. And you can see just how happy Newport Seabase is to win that B final, just ahead of Pacific and Chicago. Then coming across the line is Marina Aquatic Center, and they will do so ahead of Row, New Jersey and Saugatuck, unofficially in that order. The next race that we will have for you after a short break will be the men's under 17 single B final.
Hello and welcome to the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships. I'm Dipti Kachru, Chief Marketing Officer of Broadridge Financial Solutions, a proud partner of U.S. Rowing. This is the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and we would like to give a special shout out to the women competing this week. Thank you for continuing to elevate the sport and having a positive impact in the world. You inspire us. Enjoy your moment and congratulations.
All right, let me set the field as they come through 750. And everybody's in the picture right now as you see that bow on the left side of Leo Lombardi from Lake Leelanau, Michigan, coming into the picture. So everybody is here. This is the men's under 17 single B final for places 7 through 12 in the country in the men's under 17 single. All these athletes 16 years of age or younger. This is, to some extent, a stepping stone. It's also a great way to test their speed against athletes that are more their age. They're not having to qualify and row against athletes that may be 18, sometimes going on 19 years of age when they are only 16. So let me set the field. The red boat furthest from the camera is Nikolai Sazonov of Rockland. And then one lane closer is Griffin Hazeman of Narragansett, which is a second from the left in this picture. Then it's Connor Carey of Shaker from Loudonville, New York, in that blue boat, vying for second place. Then you've got that turquoise boat who is leading at 1,000 meters with the green hat, trademark of South Orlando Rowing Association, Samuel de la Espriella. And then flanking Samuel de la Espriella is Jackson Phillips in lane 6 from Gem City in Miamisburg, Ohio. And you can see him also rowing in a blue shell, currently sitting just in third place. Furthest to the right is Leo Lombardi of Lake Leelanau in Michigan. That is your whole field, and they are all here, Lindsay. So that was you saw the times come through at 1,000, and Samuel de la Espriella has a tiny bit of open water, and he's going to decide to play defense from here on out. But this is a tremendous singles race. A lot of times, I mean, I've done hundreds of singles races. A lot of times at this point, it's really spaced out. Look at these boats. There's 5 boats connected behind your leader.
You know, taking a look at that, you just noted a moment ago that Samuel de la Espriella out of Sora has a little bit of open water lead at this point. Based on the split that he had coming through the first 500, that means he's extended his lead just a little bit through this second 500. But right now, the next fastest mover on the course is Connor Carey out of Shaker, who has given himself about the deck, the stern deck or the bow deck length of his boat lead over the next fastest athletes out there in these singles right now. So we see one leader out in front from Sora in lane 5 in that more greenish blue looking boat over the next 5 in this event, who are all very closely connected. This is very flat straight across the board. So these young men are certainly very similarly matched in this event, especially the fact that we are about to get into the last 500 meters. So to stay this close in contact with one another for 1,500 meters shows just how tight this portion of this field is. Out of 31 entries, here we are looking for places 7 through 12, and now getting to lay down these races on, gosh, this beautiful, beautiful morning that we have here. The water is cooperating for these young men, and it is allowing them to have a fantastic race. The question is who's been holding a little bit of their cards close to their chest early on. Will we see some rate elevation occurring? Will we see some blades going more direct to the water, just seeing if they can get another inch out of it? Will one of these young men decide to sprint a little bit early? And so as I'm saying this, the next athlete, it was Connor Carey who decided to go at Samuel de la Espriella early on, but it is now Leo Lombardi from Lake Leelanau who is saying, I'm going to sprint early because I want a piece of that too.
Yeah, and there is no open water now for Samuel de la Espriella. I had him at 32 strokes a minute, so presumably he can go higher than that. So I would suspect that he's got something up his sleeve here that he'll continue to play defense with as they get into the red buoys. But look at this. Basically everybody connected. It's almost a game of chicken at this point. Who's going to push? Who's going to go? Who has enough energy and who has enough skill up their sleeve to take this one? It continues to be Sora out in front. It's about a length advantage. Who's going to start to go? This is going to come really, really down to it, regardless of whether Samuel de la Espriella hangs on to this one. We're going to have a photo finish for some of these places. This is a tremendous singles race. This is exactly why the progression system works to make exciting races. Here they come.
Still out in front is Samuel de la Espriella out of Sora, but now Connor Carey was the first athlete that went, and now we have Griffin Haseman out of Narragansett who is charging hard still. Leo Lombardi also wants a piece of it, and he has just, it looks like, fallen a little bit behind of Connor Carey there as Griffin Haseman out of Narragansett has charged in to possibly take second place. It's definitely going to be a photo finish, but it is Samuel de la Espriella out of Sora who has been able to hang on to that lead that he set early, got a little open water, and then the rest of the athletes just chipped away at it, but he was still able to maintain. So that is for, out of 31 entries, places 7 through 12 in the men's U17 singles B final here at the Youth National Championships. Too close for me to call from the tower.
Griffin Haseman did there in the last 20 strokes is exactly how you can change boat speed in these singles very quickly, because he went from, I think, 4th, and it looks like unofficially he grabbed 2nd. So awesome race. What is it, 5 seconds, 6 seconds separating all 6 boats. That was the men's under 17 single B final.
And here we are in the third 500 of the women's U17 single B final for places 7 through 12. In lane order from the far side to the near side of the course is Ava Thigpen from Hockaday. In lane 2. In lane 3, we have Annalie Duncombe from Great Miami. Lane 4, Maya Geller from Accra. Lane 5, Reese McGeary, Sylvan Scullers. Lane 6, and our current leader is Parker Hurley out of North Orlando. And in lane 7, Isabel Magna out of Sarasota Crew.
So at halfway there, Lindsay, it was a 5-second lead. I'd say it's more than that now. Parker Hurley just kind of has a pace that the others can't match. New second place, though, is Maya Geller of Accra, who has come up and gotten past Reese McGeary of Sylvan Scullers. But you can see at 12:50, those two boats are connected. But you can watch, when we had that side view, you could sort of watch Maya Geller be a little bit more powerful through the water than Reese McGeary. And that's what was giving her a little bit more boat speed, because I think her stroke rating may actually even be lower than Reese McGeary. But that's another beautiful shot of this incredibly flat water here at the premier rowing race course in North America, and your leader, Parker Hurley.
So 2 lanes over is Maya Geller out of Accra, who looks as though she's taken about clear water on the next boat in the field as well. So to be in those positions, Parker Hurley with the lead that she has, Maya Geller with a little bit of the edge that she has, the one that she has taken through that third 500, entering into the last 500 of this race. Those are solid margins to have entering into this last quarter. Knowing the work that you've done very early on in this race, it gives you that slight buffer as you enter into the last bit that takes the pressure off of you just a little bit, which allows you to relax, which a lot of times allows you to go even faster simply because you're allowing yourself to relax at a very challenging point in the race, having come through that third 500. Now is go time. Now is horses to the barn. Now is last 500, and you know that your sprint is coming. Sometimes I know, as from being in the athlete mindset, you cross that last 500, and sometimes you think, oh my gosh, I'm here already. Sometimes you think, oh my gosh, I'm only here. Either way, you know that you are counting down until you see those red buoys, and as soon as you see those red buoys, you know that you are coming in for a landing. The runway is clear.
So look how close it is. It was second separating those 3 on the left side as they came through 1,000. On the right side, that is Maya Geller of Accra. And then panning even further to the right, you'll see Parker Hurley of North Orlando, who now has opened up a tremendous lead here, maybe 30 open meters or more, as they are into the last 500. But those other 3 boats, so Reese McGeary, Annalie Duncombe, and Ava Thigpen of Hockaday, they were all separated by a second at 500 meters to go. So there could be certainly any permutation of those 3 could start to move, and you're seeing that from Ava Thigpen, mostly from Hockaday School, is really starting to wind it up. It does look like, to my eye, Reese McGeary of Sylvan Scullers, who has been at a relatively lower stroke rating than the other competitors, is connected with Ava Thigpen. But you see the top 5 here. They are very spaced out. This is not like the men's race we saw in the previous installment, and they're starting to actually track down Parker Hurley, but she's going to have to make a mistake to be caught here.
And you could see Maya Geller there. You could see the boat just start to flow along a little bit more as she got close to those closing 250-meter red buoys, which has allowed her to take a little bit of the lead that Parker Hurley had very early on, but the lead of open water by at least a length or more of a clear water that Parker Hurley has on the rest of the field here, she has taken early and maintained till the very last. It is going to be Maya Geller from Accra, who again has even more clear water on the following 3 boats behind her, who will vie for 3rd, 4th, and 5th place. And out of them, it is Reese McGeary, who has nearly broken to a length, almost clear water on the far lane. Ava Thigpen, who made a valiant move there in the last 500 meters to take 5th, followed by, or 4th by Annalie Duncombe out of Great Miami, followed by Isabel Magna of Sarasota.
So that was the women's under 17 single B final. We're going to move on to doubles shortly and bring it to you in about a minute. Okay, you're watching the men's under 17 double B final, and you're starting to see the times come in at the checkpoint at halfway. It appeared to actually be the Episcopal School of Dallas out in front of Concord out of New Hampshire. They were in adjacent lanes 3 and 4 on the race course. I guess we could be wrong, but I'm not sure that we are. So let me set the whole field for you. In lane 2, furthest from the stationary or the moving cameras that are on the east side of the race course is McNabb and Wastage from Burton Beach. In lane 3 is Masood and Inglis of Episcopal School of Dallas. Lane 4 is Garside and Lown of Concord. Lane 5 is Parsons and Page of South Eugene. Lane 6 is Felon Temple of Charlotte Youth. And in lane 7 is Giacominakis and Krokmal of ACRA. So those are your 6 boats, and it does appear, based upon the lane assignments, that it is Episcopal School of Dallas that's up there, and connected with them is Concord.
And those two, Episcopal School of Dallas appear to have taken a bit more of a lead than what they have now, so it is Concord that's surging hard on them through this middle portion, the middle 1,000 of this race, to take back some of the lead that they had early. So it's going to come to a tight race in the last 500 meters, which we are quickly approaching here because these doubles do cover a lot of ground very quickly, especially compared to a single. So here we are with a slight tailwind that we have a little, this morning, just enough to make it a little bit more helpful to get down the course in a fast time here at Nathan Benderson Park. And there it is. Our 2 lead boats are out of Episcopal School of Dallas and Concord. And it does appear that Concord has now
taken
over the lead in that third 500 as they enter the last 500. So what a place to do it. Okay, you're patient through the first 1,000. You know your plan. You stick to it, and you just chip away at whatever lead was taken on you early. And now they have, a deck or so over the Episcopal School of Dallas, who is now trying to answer what's going on. Maybe they've decided as a crew to sprint a little bit early because they want their lead back.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just did a stroke rating, and actually Concord is a beat lower than Episcopal School of Dallas, but it was just a power move, it appeared. A tremendous one there at 500 meters to go that got Concord for the first time ahead of the boat from Episcopal School of Dallas. They are still connected. They're going to trade punches, it appears, for the last 300 meters of this B final of the men's under 17 double. So that's what's going on up front. In third place, it appears to be South Eugene, Parsons and Page in lane 5. And then it's 3 connected boats behind South Eugene. So anybody could take 4th, 5th, and 6th. Any of the remaining boats, the Accra, Charlotte Youth, and Burton Beach boats could finish 4th, 5th, or 6th. Up front, continues to be a grudge match. It is Concord. They are continuing to be out in front. They, like I said, put in some sort of power move there at 500 meters to go. Took about a length from where they were sitting, just slightly behind Episcopal School of Dallas, and it's going to be hard to catch them now.
And it looks like that move gave them some energy because you can look at the body language, the way the boat's moving, the way that these young guys are moving, that they have energy left to go, and they are just taking more and more of a lead over longtime leaders Episcopal School of Dallas. South Eugene is certainly in third place. They have broken away from the rest of the pack, doing something similar in the back, and it was out of Accra here on the inside lane in lane 7, who has just an edge over Charlotte Youth there in that maroon hull. And so will they keep going? Charlotte Youth, even though they're going a little bit diagonally in the lane, is charging hard as well. And it is Burton Beach over on the far side of the course who just is falling off of the pace of these 2 that are duking it out for 4th and 5th place right now on the inside lanes. So it was Concord that just extended their lead, followed by Episcopal School of Dallas, then South Eugene, then Accra was able to get nearly a length by the time they crossed the line over Charlotte Youth, who had about a length over Burton Beach, rounding out our field of 6 here in the men's U17 Double B final. And here we are exactly crossing 750 meters in the women's U17 double B final. Of 27 entries that started the weekend, we are looking at places 7 through 12 here. Who falls where has yet to be determined. We will know in a few minutes when these young women cross the line. But first, in lane order, from the far side of the course to the near side of the course. In lane 2 are Park and Young from Utah. Lane 3, Rakeho and Jacobs Grisby from Rogue. Lane 4, Ritbrook and Knight from Founders. Lane 5, Landreth and Campbell from Artemis. Lane 6, Gilroy and Ronan from Rockland. And in lane 7 are Jones and Weisbird out of Redwood Scullers. And right now, as we cross into the cross over the 1,000-meter mark of this race, it does appear to be Artemis out in front in lane 5, closely followed by Jones and Weisbird out of Redwood Scullers in lane 7.
Yeah, what are we going to see? Maybe 7 seconds separating all of these boats as they come through 1,000 meters. Very competitive race. Anybody's race at this point as they come through the halfway mark. It is Artemis in control at the moment. You can see their lead is about a length. Second place for really the whole time that we have had cameras on this race has been that boat right in front of the camera there in lane 7, Redwood Scullers, Jones, and Weisbird. And they have about a half a length on really those 3 boats clumped at the top of your picture there on the left have sort of just been jockeying. They've had very similar speeds in those 3 lanes, not really separated by more than about 15 feet for any of them. Maybe currently you've got Founders out of Dallas just slightly ahead of Rogue out of Ashland, Oregon, and Utah maybe in between them. But it's really very close. As we see now up front that the lead that Artemis had is maybe dwindling just a little bit as you start to see a push there from Redwood Scullers. But Redwood Scullers is being really challenged now by those 3 boats that seem to be pacing each other in lanes 2 through 4.
You know, it does appear to be Founders that has a slight edge over the boat out of Utah. That's Utah in the dark hull on the far side, and they have come up into the lead that Artemis is trying to take away, or that Redwood Scullers is trying to take away from Artemis. Redwood Scullers came into this having had, having placed, Artemis had come into this having placed 6th in the time trial. So for them to be out in front early is them going, hey, you know what, we want to take this from where we sit. We are in the B final. We want to be in the A final. We want to put a stamp on this right now. And so as Redwood Scullers started to take back that lead that Artemis has had on the entire field from the very start of this race, Artemis answered and decided to push back out from there. Maybe Redwood Scullers felt what Founders was doing, but it doesn't matter because you can't impact anyone else in any other lane other than laying down your best race, because Founders is still going after it with a fantastic third 500 here that has allowed them to just nip out Redwood Scullers for second place as we get into the closing minutes of this 2,000-meter race.
Yeah, 1/10 of a second, but you can see Utah also connected with those 2 boats all the way up there in lane 2. The only one that was sort of in the mix there for a while that's dropped back at all is the Ashland, Oregon boat from Rogue. But Rogue maintains a lead on Rockland, who is in lane 6. So it continues to be Artemis, and I did have them at a stroke rating of about 29. So Artemis appears to be in control. Anything can happen in these boats, particularly in the last 250 as they get into the red buoys. But Artemis is in control. Who's going to take second place is the real question right now. Founders is looking tough. They maybe slightly have it at the moment over long-standing Redwood Scullers, who was sitting in second place almost all the way down. As soon as I say that, I'm starting to see more speed out of Redwood Scullers. Everybody's winding it up. This is Utah. Nationals. They're racing to win.
These 3 boats across, we have Utah, we have Redwood Scullers, we have Founders. Those are the boats that are surging in from behind as well. We still have Artemis out in front here, having set the tone early and then regained their lead. But the spread that you see, if you could see it from the end of the course, between Utah, between Founders, and between Redwood Scullers on the near shore is very much from the end of the course, but from the side of the course, there is very little to be determined between these crews. It could be Founders who is still surging, but it looks like Utah is also using their move, which has allowed them. You can see the stroke rate has gone up. You can see the energy coming out of the bodies of those young women there, which has given them the edge over Founders, who was our early pushers. But still Artemis out in front as the line is closing fast.
Yep, it's going to be Artemis by a length over Utah. So Utah really putting on the burners, going from 4th to 2nd place unofficially, a length ahead of Founders from Dallas. And then it's a boat from Redwood Scullers finishing about a length ahead of Rogue, who will finish almost the same distance ahead of Rockland. Very competitive race. That was the B final of the women's under 17 double here at our 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. We will shift to the next race shortly, and it will be a 4 with coxswain, the men's under 17 4 with coxswain B final. Another very competitive race as you see it shape up on our coverage here from Nathan Benderson Park. Let me set the field for you. Furthest from this camera shot is Sammamish in lane 2. In lane 3 is Saugatuck. Lane 4 is Pittsford out of New York. They are your current leader. Lane 5 is San Diego in the red boat. Lane 6 is St. Joe's Prep. And in lane 7 is Norwalk River. So you can see barely the tip of the stern of Pittsford there on the far right. They have a full length. And then look at this race that's going on for second place that has been on our camera since we caught up with this race. San Diego in the red boat closer to the camera, and it's Saugatuck from Connecticut in the white boat further from the camera. As they come through the halfway point, you'll see the times are going to be very close for second and third. Sitting in fourth place is that boat, it appears, from Prep, just ahead of Sammamish. Sammamish, the inside info that I have is that they all learned how to row last year, Lindsay. So they're here at Youth Nationals, they're rowing a men's under 17 4 with coxswain, and they're in the B final, and they're ahead of Norwalk River for fifth.
So in this event, when we started the weekend, we had 25 entries. So for those young men of Sammamish to be in the top 12 here at a 25, that's a good showing for them to be in their first year of rowing. Fantastic. Well done. Let's see what they can do from here forward. But it is still Pittsford out in front. They placed fourth in their semifinal, so they were one of the top qualifiers of this clump in this particular race yesterday, and they want to put a stamp on this as they get well into the meat of the third 500 here to assert themselves ahead of the rest of the crews here. Are the two crews that have been vying for second and third place respectively are San Diego and Saugatuck. It was close a moment ago, but those two boats saw each other in the same semifinal yesterday where San Diego bested Saugatuck, so maybe that gives them a little bit of confidence over what they did with Saugatuck, having seen them yesterday afternoon. But right now, Saugatuck, is taking that rematch very seriously and staying much closer than they did in yesterday's semi. Have they made a few adjustments? Have they made physical adjustments, mental adjustments, technical adjustments that is allowing them to hang right in there with just about 500 meters to go in this race? Will they be able to best San Diego, who they saw yesterday? But again, still, as we enter, this is this beautiful chevron that I love to talk about. The middle lanes are usually reserved for the crews that place better over the course of a tournament, and so as we see it, it is falling as previous races have demonstrated so far. And so it is Pittsford still out in front, broken nearly clear water. They've certainly broken clear water of the rest of the field. San Diego in the red hull at this point. Behind them currently sitting in second place with Saugatuck behind them in third place as we get into the last 400 meters of this race.
So you see your top 5 on the screen here, except that your leader, Pittsford, yep, there they are as we see the graphic go away. So Pittsford, obviously they are making a statement. They're a little probably peeved that they're not in the A final. They just missed out finishing fourth in these cutthroat semifinals, and they are continuing to make a statement. You can see the open water that they have. This race for second place continues to be extremely juicy here between San Diego and Saugatuck. who's going to blink, who's going to go. Looks like Saugatuck trying to go now at 250 meters left. Sammamish has gotten past Prep. They're sitting in 4th place, so Ethan Curry's men have gotten themselves out of 5th place. They've gotten past Prep. Are they going to be able to sort of track down anyone else? Does look like Saugatuck, to my eye, Lindsay, is probably going to take that battle with San Diego and potentially finish 2nd, but I don't think anybody's going to catch Pittsford.
You can see where Saugatuck, they started to sprint a little bit sooner than San Diego did, and now San Diego has taken it up as well, and they are starting to sprint. So question is, Saugatuck, are they going to maintain? Looks like on their body language that they have some energy in the tank, but so does San Diego. It's been close between these two crews. They saw each other yesterday. Is it going to be a flip-flop in the closing 10 strokes, less than 10 strokes of this race? No matter what, Pittsford's still out in front, going to maintain their open water lead over the rest of the field. And from where we sit, it is very close, but it does look like it's going to be Saugatuck taking about the deck over San Diego for 2nd and 3rd place, respectively. On the far side, Sammamish gets to open water over St. Joe's Prep, who then has a little open water lead over Norwalk River to round out your field of 6. You could tell by how quickly we said those names that this was a much tighter field in this race. These boats also cover ground very quickly, even faster than a double would.
So that was the men's under 17 with Coxed B final. And the next race that we will have that looks like maybe it just started, so we'll come back with it shortly, will be the women's under 17 with Coxed B final.
And here we are just over 3 minutes into, so we're into the second 500 of the women's U17 Coxed Fours. This is the B final, looking for places 7 through 12 in the country of our original 21 entries. And as you can see on the screen, if you can see on the screen, that we have a very tight race still here as we are coming to the closing portion of the first 1,000 meters of this race. From the very beginning, it was Brookline out in front, but first let's go in lane order. From lane 2 is PNRA Mercer. In lane 3, Miami. Lane 4, Pacific B. Lane 5, Brookline. Lane 6, Blair. And lane 7, that's the near shore closest to the finish tower, Inglemore. And that lead that Brookline had early on the rest of the field has been significantly cut down by Blair, who is now vying for the lead, also closely followed by Miami. Miami was our next closest competitor, but Pacific has also edged back up in there. So a little bit of spacing that was created during the second 500. Crews have now, the fitness, the technique, the efficiency is showing, and crews have reclumped. So for what spacing we had early on, now that spacing is getting cut down, and it is, as I speak, Blair, who has moved from second place into first place, having taken over the lead that Brookline had from the very beginning. And what a race we're having by Miami and Pacific B in lanes 3 and 4 on the far side of the course, with Inglemore just a hair behind those two crews. And it is PNRA Mercer who, even though they're just a little bit off the pace here, they are now moving as well.
Wow, what a race. I mean, I'm kind of speechless watching it. It's pretty awesome. So for a while it was Brookline. Now it's Blair at 1250. You can see Blair in the blue boat there. If you see their blades square up, there's a B in sort of a circle. Blair Academy out of New Jersey. And then they are about a half a length ahead of Brookline, who had been your leader for most of the race. It does look like to me that Miami is starting to move out on Pacific B of that battle, which when I started talking was very level. I mean, it still looks level to my eye, but maybe a couple of feet right now for Miami on Pacific B. But you can see all four of those boats are still connected. And then it's extremely close on the outside between Inglemore and Mercer, because Mercer has found some more speed. They were a little bit off the pace, as you mentioned, but they have found some speed, and they're almost level with Inglemore. We may have 6 boats connected here as we come through 500 meters to go. Again, this is as good as it gets. This is why the progression system gives us these amazing races. Even though it's a B final, you're out here to race to win. You're out here to make memories, and all of these women are going to remember this race because everybody is still in it. At 500 meters to go, it's Blair by a half a length ahead of second place Brookline.
And it looks like Inglemore as well on the inside here. They want a bigger piece of this as well, so maybe they have a little bit more momentum here in the last 500 meters. You know, David, as you mentioned, you've mentioned it a couple of times. What does that mean for all boats to be in contact, whatever the boat class is? So take 2 coxed 4s, lay them end to end, and from bow to stern, that amount of distance is all that we have from the full. All the boats fit inside that amount of space. That's incredibly tight over the course of 2,000 meters. And it is, you know, we still have Blair still maintaining their lead, and we now have almost a perfect stagger straight down the side of the course from Blair to Brookline to Pacific to Miami now at this point, stair-stepped back. But it is Inglemore with the yellow blades on the inside who is now a part of that as well, really challenging Miami for their spot, where Miami currently sits in 4th place behind Pacific B, who's currently in 3rd place, behind Brookline currently in 2nd place. But Blair is still maintaining their lead, almost
really went high. 38 strokes a minute for Blair.
Taking even more distance here because they're smelling the finish line. They're seeing those red buoys, and that's only giving them even more distance on the rest of the field, really setting the tone here for a fast last 250 meters.
So Blair, I saw them shift. It was at like 350 meters to go. They shifted the stroke rating. They went to 38, and it didn't do anything except actually take them more space relative to Brookline. Brookline being challenged by Pacific B. So at one point there, Miami was ahead of Pacific B. Pacific B very clearly now ahead of Miami and trying now to track down Brookline. Look at these boats connected. They're all going to come across the line really probably within 6 or 7 seconds of one another. This is an awesome B final here in the women's under 17-4 with Coxon. I think Blair's going to hang on and win the B final, finish 7th in the nation in this boat class. Photo finish between Brookline and Pacific B, maybe to my eye slightly Brookline by maybe a foot at the finish line, just ahead of Pacific B. And then on the outside, having a great last 250 is Inglemore, who I think is going to clip Miami for 4th place, Miami 5th, and then Mercer 6th. What a race. So many places changing hands. You had really some grudge matches all the way down the race course with some of those boats. Awesome race in the women's under 17-4 with Coxon B final.
My name is Jasper Liu, and I row for Texas Rowing Center High Performance. This is me and my dad when I'm like 2 or something.
That's where I get the muscles from.
All right, I can't stay silent. I'm watching the screen in front of me. Another awesome race going on here. This is the men's under 17 quad B final. No coxswains, and each of these rowers have 2 oars. It's a sculling boat as they come through 1,000 meters. Look at how close it is between Seton Hall Prep and Oregon Rowing Unlimited. In fact, the time's coming through exactly the same at 1,000 meters. Let me set the whole field for you, left to right on this picture. In lane 2 is Conestoga in that gold boat. Lane 3 is the aforementioned Seton Hall Prep. In between Seton Hall Prep and Oregon Unlimited is Vero Beach. Then it's Belen Jesuit and Port Rowing out of Port Washington, New York on the far right side of the screen. So that's your field. And look at this field. I mean, again, we have 4 or 5 boats that are connected, as it does look like Oregon Rowing Unlimited has decided that they wanted to make a move there at 1,000 because you saw just how close it was as the times came through. It was basically the same time at 1,000 meters, but now at 12:50, it's almost a full length for Oregon over Seton Hall Prep. But look at this. With everybody getting back into it, even on these outside lanes, Port Rowing, Belen Jesuit, look at these 4 boats. So obviously Oregon, they had some sort of tremendous move there. They decided to go. And then look at these other 4 boats behind them. Everybody is laying it out here as they approach 500 meters to go. And Seton Hall Prep, they're trying to do what they can to sort of counter that huge move that happened by Oregon Rowing Unlimited. And they maintain, does Seton Hall Prep, about a half a length then on both Belen Jesuit and the boat from Vero Beach.
And as Oregon extends their lead to open water clear here, getting into the last 500 meters, that's a comfortable position for them to be in as long as they stay clear. These quads cover a lot of ground very, very quickly. We do have a slight tailwind out here, which will help them cover it even more quickly. But as, you know, in that port, it was put a little early push into Belen Jesuit, took a little bit of distance back that Belen had on them, but then Belen answered that, which allowed them to push back out again. You could see that their stroke rate went up, which we know historically as a program, they tend to be, they have very fast lightweights, they have very quick blades, and so coming into this, being used to training for slightly higher stroke rates, being comfortable in those positions, know that Belen will have a very fast last 500 here, but it still isn't enough quite yet to overtake Seton Hall, who is still sitting out there currently in 2nd place, but Belen is charging hard, and now as soon as I say charging hard, it is Port who has just turned it on the most out of all of these crews here to take back a little bit in those last couple of strokes, which has allowed them to get in front of Vero Beach and now push up into not only Belen, but also Seton Hall, who is still currently sitting in 2nd place.
This is one of those races, Lindsay, that's getting more interesting as they approach the line. All we know is that Oregon Rowing Unlimited had that just tremendous third 500 that has given them this open water lead. They're going to play defense. I had them at 34 strokes a minute. They're just going to make sure that they get across the line and win this B final. But look at what's going on behind them. Belen Jesuit is going, and Seton Hall Prep out of West Orange, New Jersey, they are going. Is Seton Hall going to hold off this huge charge from Belen Jesuit? You mentioned Port got themselves pretty well ahead of Vero Beach. Does look like after Oregon, it is going to be Seton Hall finishing about a half a length ahead of Belen Jesuit. Belen Jesuit a full length ahead of Port Rowing, who also will finish a length ahead of Vero Beach. What a race. Coming through hot and heavy in these quads, really moving fast. as we see Conestoga taking 12th in the nation in the men's under 17 quad in this B final. So next race that we will see shortly, and we'll take a quick break before then, will be the women's version of this boat class, the women's under 17 quad B final.
And here we are about 2.5 minutes into the women's U17 quad B final from 24 entries. We are figuring out, sorting out 7th through 12th in the nation. Right now on the course, you have in lane order from lane 2, California Yacht Club, lane 3, Conestoga, lane 4, Burton Beach, lane 5, First Coast, lane 6, Peachtree City, and lane 7, Parati. It was in lane 2, California Yacht Club with our early lead, followed very closely by Peachtree City. Interesting story here in lane 2, California Yacht Club. That was the crew that had some sort of breakage happen or mishap happen yesterday, so we didn't get to see them race a full race, which is part of the reason why they're in lane 2 right now, racing a fantastic full race as our current early leaders. But again, closely followed by Peachtree City, a relatively young crew and incepted in 2015. This is their first appearance since they appeared on the show in 2015. And so for them to be here in second place right now, you could just see the two-seat peek over her shoulder, taking a look at what's going on over there in lane 2 by California Yacht Club, because they know that they are currently Peachtree City, currently sitting in second place. They want to see if they can vie for first place. But as they're doing that, California Yacht Club just seems to be ever so slightly, very gradually extending their lead that they have on the rest of the field. Peachtree City very closely followed by First Coast, who appears to be currently in third place, with Burton Beach and Conestoga following those crews. Parati currently sitting in sixth.
Another super competitive race. You mentioned, Lindsay, we really didn't see any major mishaps yesterday, except for California Yacht Club in their semifinal. Looked like there was some sort of equipment problem because they just weren't at pace, and they finished, a couple minutes behind the field. Obviously, they are showing that maybe they should have even been in the A final. This is nationals. Again, they're out here to win a race, and they're out here maybe even to lay down a time that might be competitive with the A final. And even though they had that unfortunate mishap in the semifinal yesterday, that's why we have a progression system. They're sitting here in the B final. They can still finish 7th in the country. And right now they are really throwing the gauntlet down for everyone else in the field. As you see just how really connected as we start to see these boats start to catch California Yacht Club just a little bit, particularly the boat from First Coast, which you can see there has about a half a length, second place ahead of Peachtree City. Peachtree City maybe with a half a length over really looks like, to my eye, dead level Conestoga and Burton Beach. Another tremendous race in a B final. Again, to be expected. We have found boats from all over the nation in this B final that are of similar speed. The only one off the pace at all is Parati, who's not in the picture. But up front, as we come through 1,500 meters, I think it was at least a couple of seconds for California Yacht Club. It's not going to be a couple seconds now.
And as California Yacht Club does cross into the last 500 in first place right now, it is First Coast making the largest surge here. And just before the last 500, Burton Beach was ahead of Conestoga, but it is now flip-flop. Conestoga has taken that lead, that edge that Burton Beach had on them over. So we do, as it is right now, California Yacht Club currently in first place, followed by First Coast, who is being pressured. Peachtree City falling back from their second place there, but First Coast putting pressure on California Yacht Club. The next, Conestoga, is putting a little bit of pressure on First Coast with Burton Beach in between. Both Burton Beach is answering Conestoga's call. They have now switched places. They've taken back out. Now they are extending stroke by stroke, taking a little bit more. They definitely sunk back a little bit. Now they've picked it back up, and both of those crews now have gotten past Peachtree City here as we get very close to the last 250 meters of this race. First Coast feeling the pressure by Burton Beach. You can see those red blades of Burton Beach putting the pressure on First Coast. First Coast is also going to ramp it up, which is going to make it very interesting for California Yacht Club over there on the far side of the race course, who has been our leader for the majority of this race. But the pressure is on as the last 20 strokes come.
Yeah, California Yacht Club, I had at 32 strokes a minute, and they just wound it up when they got into the red buoys. So now they're about 35. I would probably see that continue to escalate as they get into their last 15 strokes to the line here. And it's California Yacht Club. They are hanging on, and look at how close it is getting behind them. It's First Coast, it's Burton Beach, it's Conestoga. They're all right there. Just behind them is Peachtree City and Parati. We're going to have 3 boats connected behind the boat from California Yacht Club, it appears, as Burton Beach tries to hang on to second place. And I think they will do it. They'll squeeze it out in the last couple of strokes as First Coast really made it close there. So it's going to be about a deck second place for Burton Beach ahead of First Coast. First Coast with about a length ahead of Conestoga. Then it's Peachtree City about a length behind Conestoga. And then Parati finishing up unofficially in that order. So those women from California Yacht Club, Lindsay, they did avenge sort of their unfortunate situation yesterday, and they came out here and they did what they needed to do, and they went ahead and won the B final of the women's under 17 quad.
A very valiant move there by Burton Beach. It wasn't that any other crew slowed down necessarily. Burton Beach wanted their position at the end there, and they took it. That's how they did it. You could see the body language change, the rates change, and it allowed them to be very efficient, very effective to take that second place in the U17B final for the women's quad. Here we are 2.5 minutes down in the men's U17 8B final. For in the far lane, in lane 2, we have Mount Baker. In lane 3, and our current leader, Row America Rye. Lane 4 is Oakland Strokes. Lane 5, currently sitting in second place, is Row, New Jersey. Lane 6, Long Beach Juniors. And lane 7, Central Catholic Pitt. Still a very tight race, contact all the way across the board from 1st through 6th here as we get into close to being the second 1,000 of this race. Very many strokes already have been taken, and so to see the boats still this close to one another as they cross over into the second half of the race, the lead that Row America Rye, you can see out there in lane 3 in that silver hull. They had a much greater lead at this point, or earlier for the first 1,000 meters of the race. In that second 500, it is Row, New Jersey and Oakland Strokes who have eaten back into that lead. Row, New Jersey was clearly in second place, but Oakland Strokes has certainly surged in there. Oakland Strokes in lane 4, sandwiched between Row America Rye and Row, New Jersey, and they want a piece of the lead.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I'm watching Row, New Jersey row at 40 strokes a minute right now. And in this third 500, listen, I can't speak to their fitness, but 40 strokes a minute is high at this point. So I'd be maybe worried about whether they even have another gear, but right now they are hanging on to it as Row, New Jersey. So I really shouldn't say much about that other than they're at about 40 strokes a minute in this third 500. As they come through 1250, it is much closer up front. It's Row America Rye, it's Oakland Strokes, it is Row, New Jersey, and then it is Central Catholic Pitt that you see there closest to the camera. And then coming through, it looks like in 5th place is Mount Baker, just ahead of Long Beach Juniors. And look at this up front. This has gotten very, very exciting and very, very tight. The 40 strokes a minute is working. They are ahead, is Row, New Jersey, in that orange boat. We looked at the blades and we said, is that the Netherlands? But they are doing it. So, listen, everybody has their own race plans. Typically, you don't see a Youth 8 going 40 strokes a minute all the way down the race course, but it's working for Row, New Jersey right now. And as they come through 1,500 meters, you can see that their lead is a deck over now second place for the first time, Oakland Strokes. Oakland Strokes with about a deck over Row America Rye.
And we know we have about 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes left in this race, so this is just the last little bit. What can you do in less than 2 minutes with your hull? And it seems that even though we wonder about the stroke rate with Row, New Jersey and that orange hull, what can they do? It's effective, it's efficient for them. They're not doing a ton forward with the bodies. Stay upright, kick it along with those legs because, like I said before, even tired legs are stronger than fresh arms. So keep using those legs, guys. Just make it more and more efficient as they go. And it appears that it is for them, relatively speaking, to the rest of the field here. But right next to them is Oakland Strokes, who seems to have been biding their time. The question is did Oakland Strokes decide to take a move a little bit too late? Did they run out of room to go fast? Did they give Row, New Jersey too much of a lead? Because with every stroke Row, New Jersey takes at this much higher stroke rate as they enter into the last 250 meters of this race, that orange hull is surging. It is taking Oakland Strokes with them, but both of those boats are certainly well past Row America Rye at this point. But here, Central Catholic Pitt on the inside lane is now also giving Row America Rye a run for their money in the closing 12 strokes of this race, less than 12 strokes of this race. So that orange hull from Row, New Jersey in the men's U17 8B final, they are the ones that look as though they are going to take this by at least a half a length, potentially getting even more on Oakland Strokes, who is sitting now comfortably clear water ahead of Row, New Jersey. Central Catholic Pitt surging hard, but they might just run out of room. It's going to be a photo finish for 3rd and 4th place here between Central Catholic Pitt and Row America Rye, with the far lane Mount Baker just likely another photo finish, but looks as though from where we sit just a hair ahead of Long Beach Juniors, who sit in 6th.
What a gutsy row from Row, New Jersey. They took probably about 15 more strokes than any other boat down that race course, and it totally worked for them. So I tip my cap without question to Row, New Jersey there, winning the B final of the men's under 17 8. And the next race will be the women's version of the under 17 8B final.
And here we are in the second 500 of the women's U17 8B final. From 25 entries, we are looking at 7 through 12 in the country right now. Currently in lane 2, in lane order, we have National Cathedral School. Lane 3, and our early leaders, Mount St. Joe's. In lane 4, Newport Aquatic. Lane 5, Greenwich. Lane 6, Holy Names, and lane 7, CRI. Still a very tight field, as you can see here in the second 500 of the race. Mount St. Joseph being our early leaders, with Newport Aquatic very close and cutting into that lead in the lane adjacent to them, with Holy Names a very close third behind Newport Aquatic right now. But all these boats from lanes 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 still very much in contact. Only National Cathedral School just a little bit off of the pace, as CRI is currently sitting in 5th place, with National Cathedral School currently sitting in 6th place. It is Greenwich there toward the center of the field who is a little bit off the pace among those center boats that you see, the ones that are in the center lanes, but they are even kind of clawing their way back in as we count down the strokes here in the second half of this race.
So it is Mount St. Joseph, and a long tradition of women's rowing at that school. They are out in front. You saw at 1,000 meters they had half a length on second place Newport. Newport continues to maintain second place, just ahead of Holy Names Academy from Seattle. The boat in between the two is the boat from Greenwich, and then CRI is on the outside. You can't quite see them. They'd be on the right side of the picture in that red boat. And as we talked about, really all of those boats are still connected. So, again, we are seeing a very competitive B final, contesting places 7 through 12 in the nation in the women's under 17-8 for 2022 at our U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship. Good picture there of National Cathedral School out of D.C. And on the left side of the screen there is the boat from Greenwich in the center, and then just to the right is Holy Names Academy. And then there's the red boat from Community Rowing Boston. So again, anything can happen as these boats start to wind it up. They start to figure out how they're going to finish this race. It's the last race of the season. What are they going to do? What is everybody going to lay out on the line? It's getting a little bit closer up front, Lindsay, to my eye. Newport, you can see, with only about a deck and a seat to close now on Mount St. Joseph.
You know, at Mount St. Joseph, we saw them get out early yesterday, and then they ended up falling back of the pack in their semifinal, and Greenwich bested them by quite a bit. So for them to come out here and show their cards a little bit differently in this race, perhaps it was a strategy in the semifinal, knowing they wanted to lay something down here in this B final. Who knows? But whatever they've made the adjustment since yesterday, it has allowed them to stay in front. But Newport Aquatic Center is the boat that never let them go. They're right there in the lane next to them. Newport Aquatic in lane 4 in the white hull, Mount St. Joseph's in the dark hull on the opposite side, the far side from Newport. And Newport has just very gradually taken one very long move. It wasn't anything major that they did through the mid portion of this race. It was just little by little they were just a hair faster every stroke through the mid portion. Mount St. Joseph's did a good job getting up off the line early, which gave them that significant buffer. But in this last 500, as Newport Aquatic knows that they've been moving slightly more efficiently for every stroke down the majority of the meat of this race, it's going to give them some confidence to know that they have somewhere to go with 250 meters to go, which we have already 5 of these 6 crews, all 6 crews now entering the last 250 meters well into their sprints at this point. Revving it up is Newport Aquatic Center. They want to best Mount St. Joseph's, and they have overtaken the lead here at this point in the race. They know they're down to just their last few strokes. We have a very tight race happening between Greenwich and Holy Names on the opposite side of them. Greenwich still just slightly behind Holy Names, but is moving quite well. They might just jump right in front of Holy Names, who had control over them for the majority of this race. Going to come down to more photo finishes here, David.
Oh, wow. Yeah, lanes 5 and 6, it's Holy Names and the boat from Greenwich, and they're going to come down to a photo, maybe Greenwich by 3 feet, 4 feet over Holy Names. As you saw what Newport did to Mount St. Joseph in that last 500. Again, Lindsay, one of the factors maybe being that Mount St. Joseph typically rows 1,500 meters, and so maybe their goal was, let's get out and see if we can hang on. They couldn't quite hang on to the win, as Newport Aquatic Center, who is very well versed at rowing 2,000 meters in the Southwest region, came through them and won this B final. So that was another great, very exciting race. That was a women's under 17 8B final. We will come back to you shortly with the men's youth single C final.
Hello and welcome to the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships. I'm Chris Perry, President of Broadridge Financial Solutions, a very proud partner of USRowing. On behalf of my 14,000 colleagues worldwide at Broadridge, we want to congratulate all the athletes on their accomplishments in qualifying for this regatta. The discipline and consistency it takes to get here does not go unnoticed. We hope you and your families enjoy the day, and best of luck to all the athletes competing today.
What you've been watching is the C final of the men's youth single. What I want to point out as I get ready to set the field for you here is that all of these C finals, we're going to see 8 boats across. Again, this is not typical. There are not race courses in North America like Nathan Benderson Park that can support 8 boats across, but we can do it here at Nathan Benderson Park, and it's going to really provide for some extremely exciting racing. And also we're going to figure out who finishes, 13th to 20th in the nation in each of these events with these 8 boat across racing. You can still see beautiful flat water here. Let me set the field. Furthest from this drone shot in lane 1 is Benjamin Dush of Lake Las Vegas. Lane 2 is Jake Blackman of Rochester, Minnesota. Lane 3 is Malachi Anderson of Great Miami. Lane 4, Ryan Slemenko of GMS Rowing, who is your current leader. Lane 5 is Alden Weaver of the Undine Barge Club, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Lane 6, Paris Liston from Belmont Hill. Lane 7, William O'Connell of the Port Jefferson. And in lane 8 is Connor Manning of Wilmington Youth Rowing, Wilmington, Delaware. As you see the times come through there at 1,500 meters, we're into the last 500 meters. You can see the lead there for Ryan Slaminko of GMS is considerable. He's going to be really hard to track down. You're starting to have a race shape up between, it looks like that boat up there in lane 2, Jake Blackman of Rochester, and then maybe that's Paris Liston. It looks like a Belmont Hill unisuit, but it is a pretty spaced out field as they move down our race course. That is Paris Liston sitting in 3rd place, trying to see if he can't do something to put a charge into Jake Blackman of Rochester, Minnesota. As everyone starts to wind it up and go, this is the last race of the season for these men's youth singles. They had to spend a season and then a regional championship qualifying to be here at Youth Nationals, and they're all assured to finish top 20 in the nation in the men's youth single. But trying to win this thing start to finish is Ryan Slaminko of GMS Rowing.
You know, and the way that these young men got to this particular event was out of that time trial on Thursday. So this is places 13 through 20 from the time trial put in here. So perhaps it is Ryan Slaminko had the fastest time in the time trial among this group of athletes. And so maybe this is his, okay, I'm coming down the race course. I wanted to be in that AB semi. I wasn't there. This is where I am today. And so in the last, as he's come through these red buoys, it is Ryan Slaminko who took it from the beginning to finish with clear water over 2nd place, who looks to be Jack Blackman from Rochester, who was able to extend his lead to clear water over Paris Liston out of Belmont Hill, who has about a length on lane 1, Benjamin Dush out of Lake Las Vegas, and it's going to come down to a very close race between these 3 boats. It's going to be a photo finish for those 3. You heard the beeps, ladies and gentlemen, for 5th, 6th, and 7th place. And it is in lane 5, Alden Weaver out of Undine, who will round out this field of 8 in the men's youth single C final. David, what were you about to say?
I was just going to say that was a photo finish, 3 boats. It looked like it was Greater Miami's Malachi Anderson, as well as William O'Connell of the Port Jefferson and Connor Manning of Wilmington Youth. Again, another one of those races where they will remember it forever. As you see the times come through unofficially, basically it looked like about less than half a second separating those 3 at the finish line after 2,000 meters of rowing. So the next race is already on the race course, and again, very exciting, 8 boats across, C final racing here at our 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. As we have the whole field in the picture, let me set it for you. Furthest from the camera in lane 1 is Cameron Luther of Woodlands. Lane 2 is Eleanor Graham of Sylvan Scullers. Lane 3 is Lily Finch of Seattle Scullers. Lane 4 is Adalis McZeal of Marina Aquatic Center. Lane 5 is Josephine Williams of Maritime. Lane 6 is Eliza Strayer of Bromfield Acton Boxborough. Not going to say it with a Massachusetts accent. Sorry if you're watching at home. And then it's Ella Ahern of Annapolis Junior in lane 7 and Maeve Cohane of Narragansett in lane 8, closest to the camera there in that dark boat. So it does look to my eye like you've got a couple of boats sort of at the top of the race course that have decided to kind of push out a little bit from the rest. Maybe it's Eleanor Graham of Sylvan Scullers. It's also those green blades of Lily Finch of Seattle Scullers are the 2 that appear to be out in front.
And over in the far side, it does, you saw those green blades of Seattle Scullers there with Lily Finch, who was our early leader, but it does look like over on the far side of the course, out of the Woodlands, is Cameron Carries Luther, who has overtaken the lead. But for what lead she has had, we do still have, 6 boats that are nearly level as they come through this middle thousand of the race. You know, these races are long races. I had a teammate at one point in time who, you know, at the Olympic level was a length down by open water at the 1,000, and she thought to herself, looked down and realized that she had a lot of race left to row. And so she turned it on and nearly won the daggone thing. So for her to come out, or for all these athletes to come out and, okay, we took a little bit now, they're probably all in there thinking that they're staying internal on their race plan. But by virtue of them all being so in contact with one another, it's just anybody's game at this point, anybody's race at this point. Now that we're about to get into the second 1,000 of this race, it's kind of a reset because because, again, it is a long race. This is a slightly different physiological challenge than an 8 would be. An 8 would be so much faster covering these 2,000 meters. So psychologically, from one stroke to the next, there is so much self-talk happening right now. They are managing the conditions, they're managing their rate, they're managing their plan, they're managing boat speed and stability. And speaking of boat speed, stability, lead changes, all of those things, as we cross into the 1,000, we have another new leader here.
Yeah, and that leader is Josephine Williams of Maritime. As you see her there in the white boat, it looks like maybe a light blue visor. And she decided there at about the halfway point she was going to take the lead. So we'll see her in this defensive position, so to speak, out in front. And you see the Narragansett rower right in front of the camera. She's starting to really find some speed there. Maeve Keohane. And then up at the top of the race course, you see the gold boat and the black boat that are kind of trading punches, looking back and forth at each other. Eleanor Graham of Sylvan Scullers, Lily Finch of Seattle Scullers. This is just one of those races where we're seeing everybody at some point kind of make a move and take a punch. And a lot of them have been effective, and then it's gonna come down to it. Obviously, you have Josephine Williams, who decided at 1,000 meters that she really wanted to see what she could do relative to the rest of the field, and she does look, as Stuart Scott would say, she looks cooler than the other side of the pillow up there at this point, because she really is rowing well, right? And she continues to move away from the field. So that was a distinct decision at 1,000 meters for Josephine Williams, and it's really working for her. Now you're starting to see a lot of speed continuing out of Narragansett in lane 8, and Eleanor Graham of Sylvan Scullers may be the fastest other boat on the race course right now, other than Josephine Williams of Maritime.
You know, and I love seeing all these lead changes. You can see the different strategies. You can see the different efficiencies, the different levels of fitness that are happening out here. But, you know, earlier, just a moment ago, Josephine Williams, what was it that allowed her to take this, make a very big jump in from her earlier position? Is that efficiency that she has had. You could see the boat just kind of running along out under her as she was rowing very, very calmly in the hands at the finish, which demonstrates that maybe she's able to push a little bit more. She's getting a little bit more on it with the legs without, you know, pulling it along, which is exactly what you would want to see. It is out in that far lane. Cameron Carries from the Woodlands, who is, in lane 2, Eleanor Graham out of Sylvan Scullers, who is still in there as well. But Josephine Williams has taken a distinct lead. And on the inside, you could see earlier on Maeve Keohane out of Narragansett. She took a peek over her shoulder, but it didn't look like where her position was earlier on in the race was giving her any dismay whatsoever. She stayed calm, and by virtue of staying calm and being okay with where she was, it's allowed her to stay right up in here with the leaders. She is currently sitting in 3rd place. So Josephine Williams out in front, just extending her lead to open water. Eleanor Graham of Sylvan Scullers and the yellow hull out there in lane 2 in 2nd place, followed by currently Maeve Keohane out of Narragansett in lane 3. Those three are out by Clearwater on the rest of the field that is still very tightly packed for 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8th place.
Yeah, it's not exactly what I would have expected if I had to guess what it would look like here at 300 meters to go. In that, it doesn't surprise me we have a clear leader, but then those other two boats really dropping the rest of the field is kind of what surprises me, given the fact that in basically the second 500, you had everybody in the mix. You had everybody kind of going back and forth, showing what they have in terms of speed. But it was Eleanor Graham of Sylvan Scullers and it was Maeve Keohane of Narragansett that decided, look, we're going to try to go with Josephine Williams. And they have done it to the point where they have really sort of dropped the rest of the field. Everybody else, though, still pretty close to connected behind them. 4th place might be that red boat of Eliza Strayer from Bromfield, Acton, Boxborough. But it does look like going to hang on to the win here in the C final of the women's youth single and finish 13th in the nation in the boat class is going to be Josephine Williams, who did it right there at 1,000 meters. And she's going to hold off a big charge from that gold boat of Eleanor Graham, Sylvan Scullers, who will finish 2nd place. You can see just about a half a length behind Josephine Williams, as 3rd place will be Maeve Keohane from Narragansett. And then it's actually a really good finish there for Lily Finch to get back in and finish 4th from Seattle Scullers, just ahead of Eliza Strayer from Bromfield, Acton, Boxborough. And then it was Idalis McZeal of Marina Aquatic Center ahead of Cameron Luther of Woodlands, who will finish ahead of Ella Ahern of Annapolis Junior. So 8 boats across, and it doesn't get much more exciting than that. The next race that we will bring your way will continue to be 8 boats across. You're going to see that for at least the next hour, hour and a half of our racing here at the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship. And the next race that we will bring your way live on YouTube and live here at Nathan Benderson Park is the men's youth pair C final.
Hello and welcome to the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships. I'm Chris Perry, President of Broadridge Financial Solutions, a very proud partner of U.S. Rowing. On behalf of my 14,000 colleagues worldwide at Broadridge, we want to congratulate all the athletes on their accomplishments in qualifying for this regatta. The discipline and consistency it takes to get here does not go unnoticed. We hope you and your families enjoy the day, and best of luck to all the athletes competing today.
Hello and welcome to the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships. I'm Dipti Kachru, Chief Marketing Officer of Broadridge Financial Solutions, a proud partner of U.S. Rowing. This is the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and we would like to give a special shout out to the women competing this week. Thank you for continuing to elevate the sport and having a positive impact in the world. You inspire us. Enjoy your moment, and congratulations.
It's a beautiful overhead shot that we have up there at the start for those of you who have never been to the start of a race let alone a pairs race here. You know, you have 2 athletes in each boat, 1 oar per person, getting aligned at the start. So you can see that there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of responsibilities by everyone involved. So not only do you have to get attached to your respective start bridge there, where you see a volunteer very graciously laying there to hold the stern deck of the boat itself, and then you also want to be straight in the lane. You can see that the conditions are cooperating today, helping these boats stay very straight, you know, because being in a small boat in particular up at the start can be a little nerve-wracking if there's any sort of wind that pushes you around, because the stability is so much more delicate in a small boat. You know, you're rowing a pair. One of you, the bow person, is going to have to look down the course, make sure you have a straight shot. Once you get enough away from the start bridge, then the stern person, the stroke seat, that's the second person to cross the finish line here in terms of the pair, then they take over the steering responsibilities. So, but gosh, beautiful start bridge up there. There are very few of these that exist in the world at this size, where you can have this many boats across in fair lanes on a fair course. So even though you have boats connected to the start bridges, they also need to be aligned so that everyone starts dead on level. So that's why we have yet to see the start happen. You can see that not all boats are perfectly straight in the lane. And then we have to wait until the alignment judges up there make sure that it's as fair as possible, to make sure that no bow ball is sticking out in front. And that's why sometimes, you know, we see these little delays in the racing, but it's to make sure that everyone has the best race, the most fair race possible.
Take note, because you're not going to see this anywhere else in North America. 8 boats across as we get ready to have the C final of the men's youth pair. This is one of the best shots I've ever seen, even of our park here, after doing this for over a decade and watching the park go from basically a shell pit to this 2,000-meter race course that is super fair, super flat, and just has every bell and whistle that you would imagine out of a world championship race course. We'll come back with you when we get on the race course, maybe at about 500 meters, but we could not let that picture sit and not remark about it.
And here we are into the second 500 of the men's youth pair C final. From 32 entries, we are looking at places 13 through 20 in the country. Out of the time trial came all of these crews, and only about 9 seconds separated 13 through 20. So how will it fall here now that all of these guys are side by side in this 8-boat race, this 8-lane race that we have going on here right now? But first, in lane order from lane 1 through lane 8. In lane 1 is Row, New Jersey. Lane 2, Oak Neck Academy. Lane 3, South Eugene. Lane 4, Hotchkiss. Lane 5, Jesuit College Prep of Dallas. Lane 6, Founders. Lane 7, St. Joe's Prep. And in lane 8, Sarasota. Currently in your picture, we have battling it out for our lead. Very close to one another is going to be Founders and Jesuit College Prep of
two Dallas boats. How do we find ourselves with two Dallas boats in adjacent
Texas
lanes?
in the middle.
As they come through 1,000, you can see
just
your
saying
leader is Hotchkiss out of Connecticut, and they have had the lead the whole way since we started watching the video coverage of this men's pair C final. Sitting in second place is, it looks like Jesuit College Prep of Dallas, but again, it's a back and forth between the two Dallas boats, Founders and College Prep. Founders is in that gold boat. College Prep is just above them on the screen in the white boat with the black tips on the stern and the bow. And then that dark boat above Hotchkiss, a lane above Hotchkiss, is South Eugene. They are firmly in the mix and look like they are almost, if not connected, with both Dallas boats. That's a good shot there of Hotchkiss as they come through 1250. And you can see they have a tremendous lead. It's over a length of open water. And then coming to the picture there is Jesuit College Prep of Dallas. And really, South Eugene has started to put on some speed here in the third 500.
And Hotchkiss, they're out in the lead. They were the top qualifier of this clump from the time trial. They had about a half a second time faster than the Jesuit College Prep of Dallas. So to see those center lanes out in the front, that's what you might expect out of the time trial. But again, you all of a sudden get in the lanes next to one another, and then things can change. You can see that we do have this chevron pattern happening where that top qualifier of Hotchkiss is out in front by about clear water over current second place Jesuit College Prep of Dallas. And then South Eugene in the dark hull. Clearly, those are the two boats that have been now vying for that second place position. It hasn't allowed them to push back up into overlap yet with Hotchkiss, but with just over 500 meters to go in this race, it might still be enough time for, it looks that it is South Eugene that is moving quite quickly here, trying to get close up into that lead, see if they can cut down that open water current lead that Hotchkiss still has, that David, as you mentioned, has been there from the very beginning of this race.
Yeah, and Oak Neck Academy has really put themselves in the mix now, too. So South Eugene has gotten past, it looks like, Jesuit College Prep of Dallas. Jesuit College Prep of Dallas really dropped Founders, their Dallas rivals, in that third 500, as we saw that gold boat start to really drop back in the field. That is Founders. And some of these other boats start to move up, including that boat from South Eugene that is really fighting it out right now with College Prep of Dallas and Oak Neck Academy getting into the mix as well. But it still is Hotchkiss. They're into the last 300 meters. They'll see those red buoys. And can they hang on? Obviously, the pair is another one of these boat classes where you got to really pay attention to what you're doing as you finish this race. So as you start to put more power, more speed into it, you still have to be very aware of the rowing. And it does look pretty controlled for Hotchkiss still, but they are really starting to get pressed by Jesuit College Prep of Dallas and South Eugene.
And you can see from that picture there, you have Oak Neck Academy in there as well, who is across the lane there, vying for that spot with Founders, who was one of our early leaders, one of our early contenders there, but they've fallen back a little bit from the pace that these leaders are setting as we are well into those last 200 meters of the course, well deep into these red buoys as the finish line is coming along. That lead that Hotchkiss did have has certainly been now cut down very much so by Jesuit College Prep of Dallas and Oak Neck Academy, who are still very close, but it is Oak Neck who still has that tiny little bit of an edge. But out of Dallas, Jesuit College Prep, they are surging quickly here as we come down to the line. It is going to be a photo finish, still clear water ahead for Hotchkiss, but you could hear those two horns go nearly simultaneously there for those next two second and third place finishes, so you'll have to check for the official results on that one. Lane 2 out of Oak Neck Academy, they continued to take with their move that they made to take 4th place there, and it is Lane 6 in the gold hull from Founders that will cross the line next, followed by yet another very close finish for
Prep.
Places 6 and 7.
Prep and Row, New Jersey. Prep actually finishing in the wrong lane. They went over about 2 lanes there as they finished up, and Sarasota Crew will finish out our field of 8. That was the men's youth pair C final, and the women's youth pair C final is already on the race course. As soon as we get cameras on it, we will come back to you. Okay, we're on the race course with the C final of the women's youth pair. In the picture, you see Los Gatos. They're in lane 5, and they are leading this thing ahead of lane 3, Everett. And let me set the whole field for you. You see the time starting to come through. That was at 500 meters. They're actually approaching the halfway point at this point in our race course. You still get that great picture there of Los Gatos in the dark navy blue and white. As they come through 1,000, they will have the lead, and you can see they'll have about a length advantage over Everett. The entire field, as they come through, so furthest from this camera shot, all the way up there in lane 1 is South Orlando's Croft and Russell. In lane 2 is Greenwich's Schwartz and Kingsley. In lane 3 is Everett's Tooley and Hav Gerard, and they are still sitting in 2nd place. Then it's GMS's Lenahan and Prevy Sullivan. Then it will be Ruff and Kiplinger of Los Gatos, who are your leaders. Then from Three Rivers in Pittsburgh, it's Patel and Dowd. From First Coast on the east coast of Florida here, Bosco and Aetius. And then from, it's Regan and Powell. And I'm not seeing... Oh, it's from Walter Johnson Crew Club in Bethesda, Maryland. So sorry about that. The WJ, they have 2 entries here, and it's the first time I've seen it pop up. So this one, pretty spaced out at 1250. You can see those 2 leaders that are out in front. But then right behind those 2, you've got that bunched up pack of boats there that are all connected. So it is competitive sort of after the first 2. Those first 2 continue to be Los Gatos and Everett. And then you can see on the screen you've got 3 connected boats, which appear to be the ones sort of in the center lanes. As you see a picture there of lane 7, First Coast, and lane 6, Three Rivers. And then on the far side, you can see just how close Greenwich and Sora are to one another. So we have plenty of races sort of within the race, but it is a very spaced out field at this point.
To have for Los Gatos to have clear water here entering into the last 500 meters, that's a comfortable buffer for them. We've seen that out of a few crews here so far, not just today, but throughout this weekend. To give yourself that much of a margin on the rest of the field, it's something that you've done. You've done the work early on so that you don't leave it in the judges' hands. These 2 young women out of Los Gatos clearly do not want this to be a photo finish. They want to put a stamp on this race, which is what they've done, as they are clearly the first ones to be in well deep into the last 500 of this race, and it still is Everett Association with Tooley and Huff de Gerard that are in 2nd place very much solidly over the remainder of the field. Who 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th place, that has yet to be determined, as some of these crews are surging against one another side by side. We see a very close race happening in lanes 6 and 7 between Three Rivers and First Coast. Three Rivers had a decent margin over First Coast for much of the middle of this race, but First Coast is certainly surging here. The question is, as you start to get into these moments of fatigue, these young women are not only, because because they're rowing one port oar and one starboard oar. If you don't have steering, sometimes it can make it kind of challenging to stay straight perfect down the center of the lane. Any little idiosyncrasy between your matching, that can throw you off a little bit. Sometimes if there's some wind, it can throw you off a little bit. Fatigue can throw you off a little bit. But to be able to call your race plan, to be able to steer, if you're steering, you usually do it with a foot that's connected to a mechanism that then controls the rudder. So imagine pushing as hard as you can, breathing. Now you might be at the point of blackout depending on how hard you're pushing yourself. And then you still have to remember to turn your foot just a little bit to keep the boat straight. Imagine doing all of that at once. That is what a lot of these boats on the field, all of these boats on the field, are most likely doing right now. So put yourself in their position. Imagine, give them a hand and cheer if you're on shore. See if you can give them a little bit of nudge of encouragement to get even more out of this, their potentially last race for this year's Youth Nationals. And as I continue to speak, it is Los Gatos who is continuing to extend their lead. It is still Everett Association sitting in second place, but they are being charged hard by GMS, who was off the pace early, but they were the highest qualifier out of the time trial, and they have put themselves back up into the mix as well. Even though Three Rivers is still slightly ahead of them, Three Rivers is sprinting hard to make sure that they take at least top three in this C final.
And it will be Three Rivers third place, just ahead of GMS in fourth. Then it's First Coast in fifth. And then it appears it's going to be Greenwich just ahead of South Orlando. And then Walter Johnson Crew Club finishing up our field and pulling right into the beach there in this C final of the Women's Youth Pair at our 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship. Next race that we will bring your way that is well underway as soon as we get a handle on it will be the Men's Youth Double C final.
And here we are well into the C final of the men's youth double here. Let's set the stage before we tell you how things are shaking out right now in this third 500 of the race. In lane 1, Mile High. Lane 2, Miami Beach. Lane 3, Detroit. Lane 4, Sylvan Scullers. Lane 5, Los Gatos. Lane 6, White Marsh. Lane 7, Three Rivers, and Lane 8, Upper Marion High School.
As they come through 1250, your leader very clearly is White Marsh, and you can see him out in front with the green blades if we get a closer shot. Then it's the gold jerseys of Sylvan Scullers, although all the way at the top of the race course having a very good race is Mile High out of Denver. And then you can just see these boats are all really together. In fact, just ahead of Mile High, it looks like Los Gatos, and that's where they were at halfway. Los Gatos was sitting in third place. Los Gatos does appear to really be challenging Sylvan Scullers. Then it's Mile High and Miami Beach and those two blue boats all the way at the top of your screen. Just behind them is the boat from Detroit. And then at the bottom of the screen is a boat from Upper Marion High School, Three Rivers, and then Upper Marion High School, I think in that order. As they come through 1,500 meters, we will see the time start to come through. and it continues to be White Marsh. You can see that their lead is almost 3 seconds. And so they're going to see what they can do to continue it and win this C final of the men's youth double, finish 13th in the country. And look at this race between Los Gatos and Sylvan Scullers, as well as that race going on in the first 3 lanes there, Mile High, Miami Beach, and Detroit, all separated by about half a length, Lindsay. So we've got some really good races going on here behind White Marsh, and now maybe for the first time possibly taking second place, at least every time they're in the water here, is Los Gatos.
You could see it was almost an exchange where Los Gatos was putting themselves ahead of Sylvan Scullers there. They had been behind them, and it was literally bow ball to bow ball as we went straight across. You could see that's almost a perfect shot there across the line, the buoy line, to show you exactly where everyone falls. But who's moving the most right now is that boat out of Detroit who had fallen off the pace from Miami Beach and Mile High, and it looks like Detroit might have something in their sprint if they continue the energy that they are putting in the afterburners right now. They were well off the pace of that battle that those 2 blue hulls had in them early on, and Detroit has surged past both of them and is trying to push up into the race that was happening between Sylvan Scullers and Los Gatos. The question is, Mile High, they've been in a pretty comfortable position where they've been so far. They seem to be staying calm. Do they have another gear if they need it? Because there are several races happening on the course behind them right now. It's going to be a photo finish between Los Gatos and Sylvan Scullers. They are trading, and they have been for the last 20 strokes, and my gosh, as it comes down to the line,
Whoa.
it will be White Marsh still with the lead, but they no longer had clear water. It is going to be a photo finish between Los Gatos and Sylvan Scullers, and Detroit came from way behind to be open water ahead of the 2 blue hulls out of Mile High and Miami Beach, who battled it out there for 5th and 6th respectively, who will be followed by 3 Rivers in 7th, and on the inside lane, Upper Marion High School bringing in 8th. I'm not going to call it. I'm not even going to look at the times on the screen right now. You have to look at the official and the photo finish on that.
Well, what I will tell you is that I had a stroke rating on Los Gatos, and they literally were at 49 strokes a minute for their last 25 strokes. So they went a little short, but very high. They were striking the water. I mean, they clearly have been at that stroke rating before because it was very proficient, but it was 49 strokes a minute for at least 25 strokes. So if they ended up edging out Sylvan Scullers, what they did there, Los Gatos worked.
At that point, when you row those higher stroke rates, you're no longer rowing full slide at that point. You're dividing the work. Your legs are a little bit more fatigued, so the boat weighs a certain amount. You're dividing that work by more strokes to make it a little bit lighter on your legs, and that worked for them. That was not their first time at that rate, I'm sure.
No way, because it was very proficient, even though they were striking so fast. All right, here we go. 8 boats across again. It's a women's youth double C final. Let me set the field left to right. In lane 1 is Sylvan Scullers, Harrington, and McGeary. Lane 2 is Miami International, Rowhouse, Toro, and Fernandez. Lane 3 is Wright and Cardiello. Of RFH out of Rumson. It's their only entry here. Sorry for the delay. California Yacht Club in lane 4, Ba and Cox. In lane 5 is Philadelphia City Rowings, Kolbach and Capizzi. In lane 6 is Cambridge Boat Club's Manning and Lau. In lane 7 is Conestoga's Jordan and Wiley. And in lane 8 is North Palm Beach, Donor and Chance. And we can see everybody, again, still in the race. It looks like a really good start here. And into this second half of the race as they almost approach halfway. I think your leader is Sylvan Scullers all the way over there in lane 1 on the far left side of the screen. And then in second place, it appears to be maybe that boat in lane 3. But you can see it's kind of it's interesting how this one is going, simply because obviously the way that the boats have set up. It's lane 4 California Yacht Club, Ba and Cox that are out there with that lane 1 Sylvan Scullers boat. But again, being in one of these outside lanes means that you didn't do as well in the time trial as the boats in the center. And so that's a great race going on by Sylvan Scullers to this point, almost halfway.
And our early leaders were North Palm Beach, but on the inside lane, now that the race has lengthened out a bit here, not only into the base rhythm and the base rates here, but into the meat of the middle 1,000, it has started to space out a little bit. They've dropped back off of the pack. And currently our leaders are California Yacht Club, closely followed by Sylvan Scullers, and Philadelphia City Rowing there in lane 5 as well, as starting themselves and making sure they maintain contact with the leader. Sometimes being in the lane next to the lead boat gives you a little more initiative to stay in contact, in touch with what's going on in the lead. So that's why you want to put your best foot forward in every single race that you have on the course, to put yourself in the best positions, to be at a position of advantage, to know really what the leaders are doing if you aren't one of the leaders, to make sure that you know exactly what's going on. And so as this race is unfolded, it is California Yacht Club who has extended their lead, but Philadelphia City Rowing is going along with them, as are Sylvan Scullers, and in lane 3, RFH out of Rumsford, New Jersey. That's RFH Rowing out of Rumsford, New Jersey, is also in there for top 4, with Cambridge in the lane adjacent to Philadelphia City Rowing toward the foreground, also making a move at this point. And as soon as I call a boat that's making a move, there goes another one. So then we also have after them Row House as well, looking to see if they can find a little bit more gas in the tank as we get into, about to cross into the last 500 meters of the race.
So when we picked this thing up, it was really a great start by Sylvan Scullers, a great first half. As we get into now the last 500 meters, you can see that they've dropped back, but it continues to be California Yacht Club. And then that boat coming through just behind California Yacht Club is Philadelphia City Rowing. And they have a full length now on Sylvan Scullers. And then you can just see how close it is between RFH and the boat from Cambridge Boat Club as they came through 500 meters to go. So, again, 8 boats across. It's pretty it would be hard for us not to have at least some race within the race. And the very interesting one there is RFH and Cambridge for 4th and 5th, just given how close they were at 500 meters to go. It's probably the closest of any of the boats. As you can see, the whole field is pretty spaced out. So trying to win this thing basically start to finish. I think they were challenged for a while there in the first 500 by Sylvan Scullers, but trying to go start to finish is California Yacht Club. And they do look very controlled up there. They look like they have plenty of defense to play if need be. And this is the last race of the season, so you got to empty the tank. You got to go as fast, hopefully, as you have gone all season, hoping that all of these boats are peaking speed-wise at Youth Nationals.
You know, we do still have California Yacht Club out there in front, Philadelphia City Rowing going along with them, but now we have a 3-boat race across for 3rd, 4th, 5th place behind those two crews, which might allow them to push up into Philadelphia City Rowing. So we have Cambridge, we have RFH, we have Sylvan Scullers. Those 3 boats are very close to one another as we are well into the last 250 meters of this race. Clearly, the only clear thing at this point is that California Yacht Club is still out and ahead with a clear water advantage, open water advantage over the rest of the field. That's several seconds of speed ahead. In the lane adjacent to them is still Philadelphia City Rowing, and Sylvan Scullers is still managing to maintain what they're doing over on the far side of the course, but it is Cambridge that has turned on a lot in the second 1,000 of this race to potentially get back into the lead that lane 5 that Philadelphia City Rowing had on them. So if they can turn it up there in the Cambridge boat, they might be able to nudge out Sylvan Scullers. But it looks like they might have just fallen short of Sylvan Scullers, who was able to hang on to the very last, just ahead unofficially of Cambridge, unofficially ahead of RFH Rowing out of Rumsford, New Jersey. And then again, another close race between Row House and Conestoga for the next 2 positions, who are all well clear of North Palm Beach.
Don't want anyone to get mad at you. I think it's Rumson, New Jersey.
Oh, Rumson, sorry. Rumson, New Jersey, RFH Rowing.
RFH, their only entry here at Youth Nationals. Really great showing there in the C final of the women's youth double. Next race, which I can look down and see is already on the race course, we will bring to you shortly. And it's going to be the men's youth 4 with coxswain C final.
I wasn't expecting to be out in front for that whole race. It's super lightweight and it just like responds so quickly.
All right, you're watching pictures, moving pictures of the men's Youth 4 with Coxed C final. I had to chime in. It's one of my favorite events. I competed in it quite a long time ago at this point. And you were seeing at 1,000 meters that Miami was out in front by about a half a length over CRI. That is no longer the case, as I think CRI has now taken the lead. You see them there in the red boat. The boat in between with the light blue jerseys, that's Asheville Youth Rowing. They do typically have very fast fours and primarily row fours. Behind them, sitting in fourth place as we come through 1250, is Lakeside. And Lakeside is just ahead of, it appears, OKC River Sport, who is ahead of really dead level to my eye, Pocock and Jesuit College Prep of Dallas. As we then pan over and see lane 8, that's the Bowl School out of Jacksonville, Florida, who is sitting in 8th place, but again, within striking distance to see if they can't track down a couple of boats in front of them. So this is a C final of the men's Youth 4 with Coxed. These are your top 3, and they have been the top 3 since we picked this video up with this race, and it's been quite an exciting one amongst these 3 boats. So Miami, as I talked about, Lindsay, had the lead at halfway, and coming through 1,500, 500 meters to go, it's going to be CRI on the right side of the screen that's going to have the lead. So Community Rowing of Boston with the fastest third 500 relative to the rest of the field, and you can see them coming through there, and you can see Miami and Asheville basically deadlocked and level. What is that, 0.2 seconds, 0.2 of a second, separating those two as they come through 1,500.
And Lakeside putting themselves in the mix as well. They still have about 300 or 400 meters to go here, and they could give themselves a little bit more of an edge into those 3 center lane leaders. You know, walking back up on this, and you look down the course, and you can see how tight the field is, particularly as it was through halfway through the race. Now it started to separate out through that third 500 just a little bit, but still a ton of contact. A great race occurring, particularly for those top 3 contenders, now 4 or 5 contenders. And as we speak, over on the far side of the course, I mentioned Lakeside a moment ago, but it is OKC River Sport seeming to surge strong and hard. They are just about to reach that 250 meters, so that's putting even more pressure on the boats that were in those center lanes, especially our early leaders out of Miami, who have now been passed by Asheville, a youth association. CRI still out in front by just over a half a length lead on current second place Asheville, who still maintains a lead, but it is Miami has just been edged out by Lakeside right now in these closing strokes. Can Miami decide to bring it back, because OKC Riversport in that outside lane is also putting some pressure on here in that silver hull? We're going to have another photo finish, David. Not surprising here with these 8 boat races.
8 boats across, super exciting. Oh, a little bobble there from Miami is going to make them drop back further, and in fact, that may take OKC Riversport beyond them. As they come and finish up, it's going to be CRI by roughly half a length over second place Asheville. Asheville by 3/4 of a length over Lakeside. Lakeside half a length over OKC Riversport, who has half a length on Miami. And then it's going to be Pocock with about a half a length on Jesuit College Prep of Dallas, who will finish 1 length ahead of the Bowl School. I feel like an auctioneer watching 8 boats come across that quickly at the end of a race. And hopefully, unofficially, I had that all correct. But what a race in the men's Youth 4C final. And the next race will be the women's installment, the women's Youth 4 with Coxed C final.
And here we are in the second 500 of the women's installment, the Women's Youth 4C final. Having started with 27 entries, we are looking at places 13 through 20 here because we have another 8-boat final here, as we will see for the remainder of the C finals that we're going to do this morning. Our early leaders are Dayton, followed closely in second place by Gainesville area, but first in lane order. On the far side of the course in lane 1 is Asheville Youth Association. In lane 2, Montclair. Lane 3 is Pocock. Lane 4, Brooks School. Lane 5, Mount Baker. Lane 6, Gainesville area. Lane 7, Hotchkiss. And lane 8, and still our leaders, is Dayton. As I mentioned, I mean, all of these boats are still very tight, very close across Dayton. The only one with an early edge here into the second 500 of the race we had in lane 6. Gainesville coming up on them as well, but now it appears that Pocock in lane 3, now that they've lengthened out to their base rhythm, they are moving well. Their stroke rate's slightly lower than the others, and so they're moving quite efficiently, which is nudging themselves up, potentially about to take the lead if they haven't already taken the lead as we approach 1,000 meters into this race. But you can still see just how close it is all the way across the field for 8 boats.
I'm shaking my head because this is amazing. Coming through 1,000, watch all these boats come through. We're talking about maybe 6 seconds that are going to separate them all as they come through, if I had to guess. Everybody's still in the mix here at 1,000 meters. All you've got to do is find a reset, even if you're in one of the quote-unquote trailing boats. Look at these times come through. I mean, top 5 boats, 1 second. Unbelievable. What a race we've got going on here. So it does look like Pocock slightly had the lead there at 1,000 meters over Gainesville. Gainesville is in there, right in the center of the picture there with the light blue and black. And then you've got Pocock at the top of the screen right in that white boat with the white visors. That is Pocock. They are in the lead. The boat in between the two, on that picture, but really starting to challenge Pocock as well, is a Brooks School in that dark boat. So Gainesville at 12:50, they want to get back up there with Pocock. Brooks School is right there within striking distance. Everybody in the mix. Look at these 2 boats surge through. It looks like Dayton slightly ahead of Hotchkiss. So another great race going on there in those lanes 7 and 8. This is just a tremendous race. I mean, you've got maybe match races going on, but up front, it's really not very well settled either. As you see, Gainesville now maybe with the lead, but going with them is lanes 7 and 8, and they are more in the mix now with both Pocock and the Brooks School than they were about 300 meters ago.
Dayton was our early leader, and Hotchkiss was a little bit behind them, but perhaps that early lead that Dayton had took Hotchkiss a little bit more with them, which helped them stay in contact with the rest of the field a little bit early, which has now allowed them to remain in contact with the entire field late stages of this race as we cross well into the last 500 of this race right now. Still so close, coming out of the time trial, there was only about 7 seconds. That's less than 2 lengths or so that separated, place 13 through place 20. So again, depth of field, stacked nature of the field where we have a lot of very close racing happening. And now that we're in lanes side by side, it's really still anyone's game because we have seen anyone's race, I should say. We have seen leads change several times throughout this race and also in previous races so far today. So who's been the most efficient so far down the course that has put themselves in a position to have a great sprint as the red buoys quickly approach here, and we still have a slight following tailwind here that's going to help them down the course be even quicker than they might otherwise be. So that'll help. That'll lend itself to help allowing those slightly higher stroke rates to be even more efficient and effective as long as we stay strong with it, stay a little bit upright in the boat, make sure that we're just still pushing it along with our legs. And holy smokes, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 boats, possibly 5 boats vying for the lead right now, particularly Pocock, Brooks School, Gainesville, and Hotchkiss now going from potentially 7th or 8th place, now putting themselves vying for the lead. Can they find another gear? I would be remiss if I didn't also, again, put Asheville over on the far side of the course in this mix as well in those blue unisuits. So what can you find in the last 10 strokes here?
Here comes Pocock. They're going to try to hold off that big charge from the Brooks School, North Andover, Massachusetts. And it does look like they probably will do it. and finish this thing up and take it, Pocock, 3 strokes from the line to win the C final of the women's youth 4 with Coxed. They'll do it half a length ahead of the Brooks School with a tremendous last 500 meters. All the way at the top of the race course, coming out of nowhere, Asheville looks like they're going to slightly edge out Gainesville. Gainesville, who's going to finish about a half a length ahead of Hotchkiss. Hotchkiss with a full length ahead of Mount Baker. Mount Baker a full length ahead of Montclair. And Montclair with a little bit of open water ahead of Dayton. Hot and heavy, fast racing here, 8 boats across. You only see it here at Nathan Benderson Park, and that's what we're watching. Tons of excitement here, these C finals. Women's Youth 4 with Coxed C final. Next event, next boat class that we will find ourselves watching will be the men's Youth Quad C final. All right, we're on the race course, men's youth quad C final. Let me set the field for you furthest from this camera shot. Up there in lane 1 is Seattle Prep. Lane 2 is White Marsh. Lane 3 is Burnt Hills Rowing Association. That's their only entry out of Burnt Hills, New York. Lane 4, Y Quad Cities. Lane 5, Olympia Area. Lane 6, First Coast. Lane 7, Oak Neck Academy. And in lane 8, farthest on the right of this shot from the drone, Gainesville Area Rowing. As they come through 1,000, we'll start to see the times come through. Looks like lane 4 with the lead, Y Quad Cities. Not a huge surprise given how fast Y Quad Cities always is in these sculling events, particularly the quads. This is a C final, so if they win it, they'll finish 13th in the nation in the men's quad. But it is Y Quad Cities leading the field to this point.
And currently in second place, First Coast is chasing them very closely. It was only about a half a second margin at 1,000 meters, so that's a very small portion of the boat. The question is, in this third 500, I shouldn't say as the question is, in the third 500, it will tell us a lot, because if your efficiency held true for the first 1,000 meters, it's going to allow you to continue to extend whatever lead you had. You know, instead of hanging on by fingernails, it was just a part of the race, a part of the rhythm, a part of what you were doing. And so right now, Y Quad Cities is extending their lead. First Coast is still hanging on to their stern deck, but First Coast being very quickly challenged by lanes 3 and lanes 5, Burnt Hills Rowing Association and Olympia Area, as well as they are pushing up into the leaders of Y Quad Cities. The secondary race of Burnt Hills, Olympia Area, and First Coast is a hot one happening just behind Y Quad Cities for that second place position, but Y Quad is still sitting out in front. The question is, are they going to break it once they hit the 500 meters and then go, hey, let's watch us sprint, just sit back, dig into it, and take a little bit more lead. But as you can see, even 4 boats across there now vying for second place, and it does still appear to be First Coast answering the call of Olympia Area to hang on to that second place just by a nose at this point.
All right, Y Quad City's out in front by a full length. And then look at this race. This regatta just keeps getting more exciting. These races are unbelievable. Look at this C final of the men's youth quad. Look at these times come through. How many are going to be at 4:49? 3 of them. Then a 4:50.3. Amazing racing going on. Look at these 5 boats behind Y Quad Cities that are all basically separated by 15 feet. Any one of those boats could try to find some speed here, finish second, maybe try to track down Y Quad Cities. Everybody seems to be taking punches for a while there. We saw several out of First Coast. Now we're seeing a bunch out of Olympia area, who is 1 boat above them on the screen. And then those 3 boats at the top of the race course, Burnt Hills, White Marsh, Seattle Prep, all right together. What a race we have going on as they get into the red buoys. Y Quad Cities out in front. And will they be able to continue to play defense because everybody's going to charge heavy here?
Seattle Preparatory School, we haven't mentioned them out in that far lane. You know, maybe they'll do what Asheville did in the previous race. They're going to sneak in there from the outside right now. Y Quad City's out in front, taking Olympia area with them, but it is a 3-boat race for 3rd place. As these quads move so quickly, cover a ton of ground, you've got a close race between Seattle Preparatory School, White Marsh, Burnt Hills, and still First Coast in the mix, now being charged by Oak Neck Academy, forcing them to find another gear. Will it be enough to have them have First Coast re-overtake Olympia area for 2nd place? It looks like Olympia area is going to hang on to it, but First Coast is charging hard in that dark hole on the near side. Clearwater for Y Quad Cities. 2 simultaneous beeps nearly in lanes 5 and 6. You could hear the beeps in the other boats. It does sound like Seattle Preparatory School, or appear as though they were moving the fastest for 4th place out of those boats that were challenging for 4th place, as these boats all cross the line, with Gainesville rounding out in 8th in this 8-boat final. I'm not even going to attempt to repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The only thing I know is that it was Gainesville that came in 8th.
What a race. They just keep getting better as we keep watching these events come through. These C finals, 8 boats across. We are always finding ourselves with some sort of, at a minimum, race within the race that is incredibly exciting. That finish just as good as any other we have seen for the entire regatta. Next race we'll bring you shortly. Doesn't look like they've started, or maybe they just started, is the women's youth quad C final.
And here we are into the second 500 of the women's youth quad C final. From 30 entries, we are looking at places 13 through 20 that will be determined here shortly in a few minutes once this race wraps up. But first in lane order, in lane 1, we have South Jersey. Lane 2, Row America Rye. Lane 3, Space Coast. Lane 4, Conestoga. Lane 5, Nereid. Lane 6 is OKC Riversport. Lane 7, Newport Sea Base. And Lane 8, Hockaday. Currently, our leaders toward the center of the racecourse. It does appear to be Conestoga, closely followed in lane 5 by Nereid, with, again, another close race that we have on our hands. It's still in the first half of this race, so still a lot of race left to be rode here, so a lot could happen, but also a lot could happen in terms of gaps that were taken off of the start. Maybe the base is someone's, bread and butter, and so that's going to allow them to work their way back up into this race after maybe falling off of the pace a little bit from the start, so that has yet to be determined. But as we are a little over 3 minutes into this race, about to get into the second half, it is still Conestoga out in front, lengthening right now, with Nereid still chasing them very closely behind, with Space Coast being our next fastest, who is eaten into the lead that Nereid had on them, potentially going to overtake them before we reach the 1,000.
Yeah, Conestoga looks strong out there. They continue to maintain about that length lead over Nereid. One of the things that's amazing that we can see with these HD cameras as they come through 1,000 meters, we start to see sometimes. You see there's a decal on the side of the Nereid boat. It's a decal from World Rowing, meaning that they probably use that boat either as a training boat or as a racing boat in a World Championship level event. It also says USA on it, so typically they will have country codes as well. And so that was a USA national team boat that these women are getting to row in for Nereid in this C final of the women's youth quad. Just one of those little things that you can pick up on because we have such great cameras. You can see it's still a length lead as you have that beautiful picture overhead of what Conestoga is doing to maintain that one length lead on the field. Nereid still in second, Space Coast still in third. But, and we're starting to see sort of a chevron in this one, a little bit more so, Lindsay. But as they come through 1250, I can guarantee you when we see the rest of the field, you're going to see some races within the race. Not to mention you've got Nereid only about a half a length there ahead of Space Coast. So that is a race within the race. Then you see this lane 6, 7, 8 all coming through along with lanes 1 and 2. Everybody is there. 5 boats connected behind those top 3.
And through the middle portion there into that third 500, Space Coast was about to challenge Nereid to take over the lead, but Nereid definitely answered and pushed back out to have at least a few seats, if not a half a length lead over Space Coast. So Nereid, I don't want to say comfortably because a few seats is not a comfortable margin by any stretch at this point over to have control of second place as we get ready to enter into the last 500. The only thing that seems to be a little bit comfortable is Conestoga, not just that they're out where they are, but to be at this point in the race, to be where they are. They have taken control early and maintained control and continued to take maybe even a little bit more control as they've broken to clear water, open water over. There's no longer overlap between the bow and stern of them and Nereid. So it appears, unless barring any change, that Conestoga will take this from beginning to end by a decent margin, and Nereid is going to, we can already see by the body language of the boat itself, that they are also going to step it up, potentially sprint a little bit early, which is certainly taking Space Coast with them, and it does appear to be OKC River Sport in the lane adjacent to Nereid, who is currently sitting in 4th place. South Jersey and Row America Rye, that battle on the far side of the course, is putting a little bit of pressure on OKC River Sport. They don't have a coxswain to help them out to know what's going on so far, way far across the lanes from them, but that doesn't really matter because Newport Seabase and the Dark Hall right next to OKC River Sport and Hockaday as well are right there putting pressure on OKC River Sport. Hockaday might have even snuck past OKC River Sport in the last 250 meters as they are certainly charging on the near shore. Hockaday School is charging as they enter that last 250 meter red buoys.
Yep, the Hockaday School out of Dallas, they are moving in that lane 8. Maybe they're being pushed along by hearing the crowd just a little bit more than the other lanes further away from the beach. Continues to be Conestoga, and it does look like they are in control still as Nereid tries to push them. Nereid's still in a solid second place ahead of third place Space Coast. And then look at these 5 boats. We're going to have connection, it appears, for 5 boats behind those top 3. So that's kind of what we've seen over the last 700 or so meters as OKC River Sport maybe loses their course just a little bit, went a little bit to starboard. They're still in their lane, shouldn't be an issue. As you see Conestoga winning this thing by a length ahead of Nereid. Nereid half a length of open water ahead of Space Coast. And then it's going to come down to it, but you're right, Lindsay. The Hockaday School appears that they are going to grab 4th place. Great last 500 meters for Hockaday to finish just ahead of Newport Seabase and South Jersey, who will finish ahead of OKC River Sport and Row America Rye, I believe in that order unofficially, as we finish up there with the Women's Youth Quad C Final. Next race is a new race in the program, and we're going to see the boat class of the men's youth straight fours, no coxswains, as well as the women's youth straight fours, and we'll be back to you momentarily with it. All right, you saw a picture there of your leader, which is Sarasota Crew. They're in lane 4. It looks to me like second place as they come through 750 is the boat in lane 2 from Oregon Rowing Unlimited. Let me set the whole field for you. You see a lot of them in the picture here. Furthest from this camera shot would be Vero Beach in lane 1, Oregon Rowing Unlimited in lane 2, Whalen Weston in lane 3, Sarasota Crew in lane 4. In lane 5 is TriStar. Lane 6 is Pacific. Lane 7 is White Marsh. And in lane 8, which would be closest to the beach coming down, is Miami Beach, as we saw that, again, overhead shot of what's going on in the Sarasota Crew boat. And, in fact, I was a little wrong there. I didn't see Vero Beach. Vero Beach may be slightly ahead there of the boat from Oregon Rowing Unlimited for second place. You can see on the left side of the screen just how close they are. As they come through 1,000, we'll see the margin much better. It's a full length of open water for Sarasota Crew ahead of, it looks like, TriStar. And then, 4 boats separated by maybe 5 feet after that? Look at what's going on here in this one. As you start to see Oregon Rowing Unlimited starting to motor away from Vero Beach on the left side just a little bit, getting themselves into a solid third place behind TriStar. Continues to be Sarasota Crew. That's about all we know at this point. That's fairly well settled in this race as they come through, as they came through 1,000 meters and they approach 1250. These are straight fours, no coxswain, and so it's 4 sweep rowers. And this is a great boat class. They're very fast boats. It is a coveted boat class at the World Championship and Olympic level. You see Sarasota Crew out in front.
Sarasota Crew comfortably out in front by open water at this point in the race. And David, you were right. Vero Beach out there in lane 1 did have the advantage on Oregon Unlimited in the second 500, but Oregon Unlimited retook that advantage. So now Oregon Unlimited in lane 2 is out ahead of Vero Beach. But it is a very close race that we're having. TriStar is in the mix right there in the lane adjacent to Sarasota, closer to shore. And then there's a very tight race happening between White Marsh and Pacific, with White Marsh appearing to have taken a little bit of the edge that Pacific had on them earlier in the race. It was nearly dead level at that point, but White Marsh has taken advantage of the lead that Pacific had on them through the first portion of, so from 1,000 to about 1,250 meters, that's where White Marsh really took advantage of Pacific. And now getting into approaching this last 500, Sarasota, of course, into the last 500 now, right now, crossing into it. White Marsh will have TriStar as well, crossing the second 500, as well as in lane 2, Oregon Unlimited. So we have a very close race happening now for second place unfolding. Still Sarasota Crew from wire to wire extending their lead. Now we still have this slight following tailwind here, so that's going to help them move even faster. We remarked yesterday about how these straight fours work. You say a coveted boat class. My goodness, it is a boat that moves very fast. It's just as tippy, can be just as tippy. Almost feels like it's moving on rails sometimes. Almost as tippy as a pair would be, but holy smokes, it moves so much faster without having that coxswain in there. The fact that these young men are steering with their foot, you have to have a steering mechanism attached to your shoe, not unlike a pair might be, but again, moves so fast you have to have that technical dexterity too.
Yeah, or even not steering at all. Some coaches take the steering mechanism out completely from these boats. And then other coaches, as you see with the Sarasota Crew boat, they're going to set it up for the best success to go straight by how they rig it. So you see 2 starboard oars on the same side there, and seats 3 and 2 in that Sarasota Crew boat that's out in front. You see Oregon Rowing Unlimited above them in the picture as they really start to wind it up. It's Sarasota Crew out in front. Nobody's going to catch them. But look at this race. It's White Marsh, it's Oregon Rowing Unlimited, and it's TriStar that are all really pushing. It's Pacific that are all really pushing. Pacific with a great last 500 meters to really push themselves into the mix, and they may end up taking second place. It's going to come right down to it. White Marsh trying to hang on. Wow. Another photo finish here.
White
Second,
Marsh
third, fourth.
Nudge past TriStar. That is TriStar there in lane 5, and it is White Marsh came back. They did have Pacific had an edge on them earlier on, and White Marsh was able to push past them, which allowed them to push all the way up into both Oregon Unlimited and TriStar for that. But the one clear thing that we know is that Sarasota, by winning the men's Youth 4 C final, they are 13th in the country here in this particular event.
So another exciting 8-boat across C final. Next boat class will be the women's version or installment of this Youth Straight 4. We'll come to you shortly with that, and then we're going to have some 8s to finish up our morning session. All right, another amazing shot of the entire field here. This is the women's straight 4 without coxswain, coxless 4, however you want to call it, C final. And on the screen, you're looking at the boats that are sort of out in front. You actually have lane 1, which is Dayton, and they are out in front along with, it looks like, Williamsburg and Long Beach Juniors as they come through 1,000 meters. The entire field is Dayton up in lane 1. Lane 2 is Pocock. Lane 3 is Culver Military Academy. Lane 4 is Williamsburg. Lane 5, Long Beach Junior. Lane 6, Mile High. Lane 7, PCRA. And in lane 8 is Charlotte Youth. So that's your field. It does look like Dayton all the way up there in lane 1 did have the lead at 1,000 meters by less than a second over Williamsburg. Williamsburg less than a second over Long Beach Junior. So those were your top 3. Looks like Pocock was sitting in 4th place just ahead of Culver. So those are your top 5 of this 8-boat field. Again, one of the things that I am looking at just a little bit, especially particularly when we get this overhead drone shot, is the courses of these boats, Lindsay, because as you mentioned, not only the quads, but these straight 4s, there's no coxswain. They really have to do what they can to keep these boats straight. Again, sometimes coaches take the steering mechanism out completely. They leave it on the rowers to try to figure it out with what they're doing through the water. But you're going to see some sort of back and forth in some of these lanes to some extent, sort of touching every part of the lane as they come down, because if one rower sort of misses a stroke, takes a half stroke, doesn't have sort of a perfect amount of pressure, sometimes you're going to lose course there fairly significantly even in a stroke, and then you got to get it back. So I was seeing that a little bit from the overhead shot. You're seeing that every once in a while one of these boats looks a little bit askew. But again, they're not super easy to keep straight. And with it being a new event, really none of these rowers probably have a ton of experience in this boat class.
You know, right now it does look to be that Williamsburg has overtaken that lead in lane 4 by just a little bit, by maybe just the deck, not even quite the bow deck there, over Long Beach Juniors, who are just pacing them at this point. They are staying side by side. Out on the top of the picture, it is Dayton, who appears to be in 3rd place right now, staying right along with them as we get into the last 500 meters of the race. But it is also Culver, who is vying for taking over 3rd place from Dayton as we enter into the last quarter of this 2,000-meter race. Over here on the near side of the picture, closest to the shore of the finish tower, the PCRA, Pelham County Rowing, and Charlotte Youth Rowing, they are also having a nice little race between themselves here on the inside. Charlotte Youth, actually Mile High, PCRA, and Charlotte Youth are challenging one another here on the near side. The question is, with PCRA sandwiched in between those two crews in lanes 6, 7, and 8, it'll put a little bit of pressure on them, as Charlotte Youth does appear to be the crew that has stepped out in front of the other two, which might start to put a little bit of pressure on the yellow hull of Long Beach Juniors. Still Williamsburg out in front right now, as you can see just a little bit of steering happening there in the lane adjacent to Williamsburg. So that's going to, from Culver, so that's going to make Williamsburg put a little bit more gas down to push them back up into the leaders there.
Yeah, so it's Williamsburg out in front, and they continue to maintain, looks to my eye like they have about a full length advantage on Long Beach Juniors. Those two boats are out from the field. You do see this orange boat, Charlotte Youth in lane 8. They're pushing, but you've got all the way at the top of the race course, you've got Culver, and I should call them Culver Academies. I don't know if it's called Culver Military Academy anymore, but my assistant coach in college went there about 60, 70 years ago, and it definitely was called that at the time. So Culver is really showing some speed. As we see, it's going to be an open water win for Williamsburg in this women's youth straight 4, and open water of about a half a length that they will finish ahead of Long Beach Juniors. Long Beach Juniors almost a full length of open water ahead of Culver. Culver half a length on the boat all the way at the top. Dayton, who just edged out, it appears, Charlotte Youth. Finishing behind Charlotte Youth will be Pocock, and then it is Mile High, about a half a length ahead of PCRA. Again, coming through so fast, hot, and heavy, hard to make sure that we get it all right, but that was the women's youth coxless 4 C final, and we're going to have about 4 8s races to finish our morning session here of day 3 of the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship, and we will be back with you shortly.
And here we are in the men's Youth 2v8 C final. In lanes 1 through 8, we have another 8-boat C final here this morning. In lane 1, Port. Lane 2, CRI. Lane 3, White Rock Rowing. Lane 4, Chicago. Lane 5, Montclair. Lane 6, DC National. Lane 7, Rose City. And lane 8, Milwaukee, looking at places 13 through 20. This race will decide places 13 through 20 in the country. Right now, our current leaders are Montclair, taking Chicago along with them. So those are the two crews in the very center of the race course in lanes 4 and lanes 5, not respectively, but in the dark hull is Chicago, and in the light hull is Montclair. Montclair was the early leaders, had a little bit more, but in this second 500 of the race, Chicago has taken back some of the lead that Montclair had on them early to not quite bring it level yet, but just a few seats down from being bow ball to bow ball here as they are approaching the middle as they are well into the middle thousand of this race.
Montclair Scholastic School out of New Jersey. And at 1,000 meters, you can see they're only a couple feet behind the big club Chicago Rowing Foundation. And then it looks like all the way in lane 8 is the boat in third place. That's Milwaukee. And then everybody clumped together thereafter. Everybody connected. So we've got really tremendous racing going on here. Again, in another 8-boat across C final, this time being the men's youth 2v8. And it continues to really just be that same lead there for Chicago. Maybe as soon as I start talking, I'm seeing the coxed move up a little bit relative to Montclair. Montclair about 37, 38 strokes a minute. As you see a good shot there of the blue of Milwaukee. And you can see Milwaukee now has about a length lead on Rose City. Rose City with about a half a length there on DC National. And then you've got those 3 or 4 boats, Port, CRI, White Rock, all clumped together there at the top of the race course. Again, within striking distance of a couple of those boats ahead of them, Milwaukee, Rose City, DC National.
And as you can see during that portion of the race there, that third 500, Chicago is extending their lead. Now they have about a half a length, just about to break open, past a half a length, getting into 3/4 of a length lead on Montclair. So if they keep this momentum going, it's going to set them up as they are about to cross into the last 500 of this race. Certainly less than 2 minutes left for each of these athletes on the race course right now, as 8s do cover a lot of ground very, very quickly here. And so we'll see who winds it up first. The 8s, you might see some higher stroke rates happening. We're going to find out who's going to sprint early, who's going to sprint a little bit later. Sometimes teams wait until they get into those red buoys. Sometimes they know they need to throw a haymaker and start sprinting with 400 or 500 meters left to go. Part of it's strategy. Part of it is what do we need right now. What we know is that in lanes 4 and lanes 5, still Chicago and Montclair out in front, being contested very closely, or being contested now, challenged for third place, is Milwaukee. They are really pushing out from the rest of the field, creating some distance between them and the adjacent lanes of Rose City and DC National. But they also need to stay aware of what's going on the opposite side of the course, as we do have 3 boats on the far side in lanes 1, 2, and 3. Still Port, CRI, and White Rock, still very much in contact with one another. Of those 3, Port, CRI, and White Rock, it does appear that Port is ahead of White Rock, who is ahead of CRI by just a few seats, maybe a quarter of a length, something like that. And just as I say that, CRI has already begun to sprint because they want to get another piece back from White Rock. But keep an eye out. Chicago still extending their lead. Montclair next to them would be in second place currently, and Milwaukee charging hard, if not looking to take the lead, that take over second place from Montclair.
Yeah, Milwaukee really pushing it hard, using maybe the crowd, using that lane 8 to try to see if they can track down Montclair. I don't know if they'll do it, but they certainly are trying, and the effort is there. As you see Chicago out in front now and really rowing away with this C final of the men's youth 2v8. And they're going to do it in style with open water, will Chicago. And then it's going to be Montclair. Are they going to hang on? Is Milwaukee going to catch them? It's going to be very close. They will be connected at the finish line. It does look like Montclair will hang on to second place in this C final, and they will finish about 3/4 of a length ahead of Milwaukee. Milwaukee will finish about 3/4 of a length ahead of Rose City in the adjacent lane to them. Oh, big ejector crab from Rose City at the finish line, but they still will finish in 4th place. All the way up at the top of the race course, it is Port, who looks like they're going to finish in 5th place, and then too close to call, White Rock and DC National just ahead of CRI. So, quite the action there at the finish line with an athlete who's going to get picked up and is going to get a ride back to his boat here from Rose City, but it was won by Chicago, as I said, in style with open water ahead of Montclair. A great row from Montclair. Again, a Scholastic School finishing in 2nd place. That was the men's youth 2v8 C final. And the next race that will be on the race course, as has been the pattern all morning long, will be the women's installment of this boat class, the Women's Youth 2v8 C Final. All right, so you see the start list here. This is the Women's Youth 2v8 C Final. The rules of rowing are that if you don't leave the line, you will get assessed a false start. It looked to me like their lane 7, Morristown High School, did not leave the line. And sometimes, really, quite frankly, that's perfectly acceptable within the rules of rowing. You're just going to be assessed a false start. So if there's any other problem from Morristown in the successive second start of this race, then they could be excluded. Again, even at that point, it is the discretion of the umpire as to what they would want to do if there is a second situation. But everybody's going to come back in, so we've got a few minutes here. If we keep this picture or we get the overhead drone, you're going to see all these boats coming back. The red flag came out because Morristown didn't leave the line. And again, that is perfectly acceptable. Rules of rowing will dictate that they will get a false start assessed to them, but even one false start does not exclude you from a race. So you can see the boats turning around, going back into the blocks. Unfortunately, they got pretty far down the race course, I think, before they were stopped. But either way, we'll get them back in. Be a few minutes to the start here of the Women's Youth 2v8 C Final.
And here we are recollected at the start line of the Women's Youth 2v8C final from 23 entries. We are looking at 13 through 20 here. So now that we are regrouped and just about aligned, we are going to take off. And yes, we have a clean start this second go around to take off from here. In lane 1 on the far side of the course, we have Holy Names. In lane 2, Green Lake. Lane 3, Port. Lane 4, Wilson High School. Lane 5, White Marsh. Lane 6, New Trier. Lane 7, Morristown High School Rowing. And in lane 8, Sammamish.
So that's your that's your field. As we see early on here, maybe Morristown has dropped back just a little bit. And again, they had decided for whatever reason, which typically is a good decision if the coxswain doesn't determine that the boat's ready to go, to just basically not start. And so that's why we had everybody coming back in. You saw the pictures of that. Coming through 250, we do have a good clean start here. Looks like it's going to be an official race. As you see lane 4 trying to pop out a little bit, it's Wilson High School. But look at how competitive this race is. It's almost not even worth doing anything other than mentioning that Wilson High School does appear to have just a slight lead. Look at this picture. Look at all these athletes in the picture here. Everybody's still in this race again early on. These C finals have really been exciting, particularly because it's 8 boats across, but also because of just how competitive they all have been. Only saw one coxswain in that picture. I think it was the Wilson coxswain there, Lindsay. But they continue to be out in front in that green boat with the green blades, or excuse me, the green top deck at least. It looks like a dark black shell. Look at this race.
Yeah, a lot of green happening there on the course so far at this point in the race. We have also New Trier poking up in there, also wearing a little bit of green in there, so not to be confused there in lane 6. But Green Lake was in the mix. Woodrow Wilson High School out of D.C. was our early leaders there, and New Trier now also looking to put themselves in the mix here. But pretty much everyone staying in the mix, when I say in the mix, because we do still have a lot of overlap here as we are just crossing into the after the first 500 of the race, now getting into the middle 1,000, so the middle 1,000 being the second and third 500 meters of the race. That's really the meat, the thick of it all, where a lot tends to unfold. And the more efficient that you are during that middle portion, that allows you to have another gear, that it gives you another step that you can take in the last 500. This is a long race. It's all about efficiency. And right now, all 3 of these crews, talking about green, we haven't seen a lot of green today. All 3 of these crews with some green in them. It looks like it is, Woodrow Wilson, White Marsh, and New Trier being the teams that are in your picture right now.
As they come through 750, it is a lot of green. Those are your top 3. They kind of have just been sort of trading places throughout. It is Wilson maybe still with a slight advantage over New Trier. New Trier, slight advantage then over the boat from so that's Wilson there that is out in front. Then you've got White Marsh sitting in 3rd place. You also see that white boat in there. That's that is White Marsh with the green.
And Port looks like our new leader.
Yeah, so we actually have another boat in the mix there, which is Port Rowing. And you've still got connection, both lanes 1 and 2, Holy Names and Green Lake, 2 crews out of Seattle. All of these boats still connected. The only ones not connected, Morristown and Sammamish at the moment, but they appear to be connected with one another. As they come through 1,000, you're going to see just where all of these boats do stand. As you see then, Sammamish coming through 1,000. What a race we have. Another C final that is super competitive. Look at these 4 boats that are out in the mix. Port kind of coming out of nowhere there because they just sort of got into this field of green as I began talking, and now they certainly have the lead.
Yeah, they were just out of that picture that we were talking about earlier, and I had a feeling they were sneaking up there on that, in that lane 3 next to Holy Names and Green Lake. And as the middle of this race is unfolding, Port is taking a little bit more of a lead. You can see how aggressively they're attacking this second 500 of the race. It is New Trier in lane 6 in the foreground of your picture with the blue and the green, who is currently sitting in 2nd place behind Port, but also looking to make a move and push back in there, as White Marsh is also putting some pressure on New Trier to push them ahead. and just a little bit, just a hair, just the tiniest bit behind White Marsh is Woodrow Wilson, our initial early leaders in this field. But Woodrow Wilson, even though they were the early leaders and have been overtaken by Port, they aren't dropping back. They're staying right in there. So they're going bow ball to bow ball, exchanging punches, as you would say, David, with White Marsh, who is putting pressure on them. But New Trier is also vying for that lead. So between Port and New Trier, those are the two boats going back and forth for first and second, with the last 500 of this race rapidly closing in on all of these boats, and still a ton of overlap. A fantastic race that we are having here in the women's 2v8C final. Looking for places 13 through 20. It's going to be close all the way down to the wire.
What a race. I can only imagine being one of these coxswains because it's so loud in a situation like this. You got 4 boats across. They're all going at one another. Everybody's trying to counter every move, take moves, try to get a lead. As they come through 500 meters to go, it looks like Port's going to maintain about a deck lead over New Trier. New Trier with about maybe almost a half length over Woodrow Wilson, who's got only a deck over White Marsh. Then it looks like that blue boat all the way up there from Holy Name, slightly ahead of Green Lake. And Moorestown in the mix now as well. Look at Moorestown getting into this action. Really started off, and they may have been the slowest boat through 500 meters. Now they've actually gotten past both Seattle boats, Holy Names, and Green Lake to get in the mix. So what a race we have here still going on. Maybe New Trier now taking the lead. Either way, it's extremely close. One of the things that I was watching when we had that sort of view where the boats were, where we saw just athletes filling up our entire screen, is one of the things that I'm not sure I've ever remarked about is just how violent it could be in these 8s for the coxswains. If you look at the coxswains from those close-up shots on the side, it looks like they're riding a bull. It's a back and forth every single time that these boats drop into the water. There's a violence that happens. Here comes on the outside that boat from Port. They're trying to see if they can't take this thing and have just a tremendous last 1,000 meters to get past New Trier. They're all coming to the line here, Lindsay, hot and heavy, and everybody really is in it.
You know, Woodrow Wilson was our early leader, and they have been able to stay in it as well, but it is Port that got past them all, and New Trier appears to be in second place. Port certainly charging hard at that efficiency in the middle of the race has given them a place to go here as they are extending their lead on the field little by little, ever so slightly as we approach the finish line, and it's going to be a photo finish between Woodrow Wilson and New Trier coming all the way down to the line, but Port has certainly given us an obvious win here in this C final unofficially. Very close between Wilson and New Trier, with White Marsh sandwiched in between them. Holy Names out in lane 1 in the blue hull, looking to have taken 5th place over potentially too close for me between Morristown and Green Lake there for 6th and 7th place, with Sammamish coming across in 8th.
Another awesome race. We have 2 more 8s races. It's going to be the men's and women's Youth 8C finals to end our morning here, day 3. At the 2022. Actually, that may actually end our morning. We'll see what happens with the Youth 8s, as it appears that that is the last race that we have out there and available on the race course. So if there are any announcements to make, we will come back with you. But the Youth 8s are not going to go, at least at this time. So we'll have still the men's Youth 8 and the women's Youth 8 C finals, as well as many more C finals for you this afternoon at the 2022 U.S. Rowing Youth National Championship.